weak. No.
I am in charge.
Boy, was Spielberg ever wrong. Close Encounters my ass.
Fire.
Hurry! Got it!
I am Scorpius.
But of course you are.
Of course he is. And of course, Scorpius is the most intriguing of all of the many incredibly intriguing characters in Farscape. Though not introduced until 19 episodes in, Scorpius becomes Farscape's main villain and arguably one of the best villains in all of sci-fi. But like everything Farscape, we can't take Scorpius at face value. A villain? Yes. Evil? Well, yes, but it's not that simple. Because if Scorpius is the devil, then I have sympathy for the devil. Who is Scorpius? What makes him tick? And what does he tell us about the nature of evil? Initially, Scorpius seems an emotionless, evil villain.
That man. He is an imposter. Seize him.
Cold, calculated, a hunter after his prey. Scorpius takes control of situations and shrewdly projects power.
Captain Crace will go to the chair. To stop that, you will have to kill me. And all my men.
He has his own secret base. And of course, he has a diabolical device. Yes, the Aurora Chair. Scorpius is presented to us with all the hallmarks of a classic mad scientist. But Farscape did that shtick already. Scorpius is different. True to form, Farscape shows us a stereotype and gradually demolishes it. Scorpius isn't mad, he's not entirely evil, and he isn't a cartoon villain. Farscape is too smart for that dren. Is Scorpius evil? Well, is Crace evil? Is Zan evil? How about Crichton?
I could kill more people.
Like others on Farscape, Scorpius is a complex character. Perhaps the most complex character because of his parentage. We know from the start he looks odd and is dressed odd, but we don't know why. Being the great storyteller that it is, Farscape doesn't bore us with excessive exposition. We learn about each character in a natural way as events unfold. Scorpius is thrown at us just like he is thrown at Crichton, with no explanation as to who or what he is. Our first clue about Scorpius is a comment from Crace.
Did you really think you could strike an honest bargain with a Scaran half-breed like him?
It is also the first mention of Scarans, who we don't meet for a while to come. Then we get a glimpse of this interesting scene.
All patrols still report nothing, sir.
Lieutenant Braca is as surprised and confused as us.
No trace of Crichton. Nothing.
We have to wait for a Scaran to explain this.
You know this mutant's weakness, that his Scaran half loves the heat, thrives in heat, craves heat, but his peacekeeper half is destroyed by that same warmth.
In other videos, I've talked about how Farscape characters are divided by inner conflicts, but those are psychological conflicts. For Scorpius, his inner conflict is physical. He is, as Empress Catrala calls him, an abomination. He is physiologically unstable, a biological mix that should not be, almost can't be. We have to admit that Scorpius carries this torturous burden with fortitude. But strangely, this is not Scorpius's biggest burden or concern. The dominant conflict in Farscape, the original series, was Scorpius's obsession with acquiring the wormhole knowledge hidden in Crichton's memory. What Scorpius puts Crichton through can easily be described as evil. But Scorpius isn't doing what he does to Crichton out of malice, or selfishness, or a desire for power.
You think I want wormholes to betray peacekeepers and to conquer the universe myself? I don't want power. I want revenge.
Scorpius has a higher purpose, and is more than simply revenge. So though I could focus on Scorpius's indifference, or his brutality, or his sex life, at least that's what seems to be sex, in this video I'm going to focus on Scorpius's purpose.
One of us has a purpose, don't you, Crichton?
Crichton does have a purpose. Aaron. Everyone go, aww. But this isn't Crichton's only purpose. He reluctantly aligns himself with Scorpius's purpose. Obviously, a lot of Dren passes under the bridge before Crichton becomes allies with Scorpius, but Crichton comes to understand, along with us, that Scorpius does what he does for a dual purpose. Revenge, yes, but also a certain amount of altruism. Scorpius's purpose goes back to his birth and upbringing, which is not explained until 37 episodes after we meet Scorpius. Even then, Scorpius reveals his past only to the neural spillover Crichton within Scorpius's mind. Scorpius did a Dren-poor job of explaining himself and his motivations to real people. But when showing his memories to the neuroclone Crichton, we see the real Scorpius, the person he doesn't have the courage to show the universe.
Then help us.
Scorpius was a survivor of intense psychological and physical abuse at the hands of the Scarran Tauza. He is an abomination, and is treated as such by his torturer. Scorpius learns strength and patience from her, and learns of his ability to read energy signatures of others and know when they are lying. Above all, he learns how Scarrans think, and the danger that they pose to the universe.
I want to wipe out the Scarrans before they wipe us out.
The best way to describe Scorpius is as a goal-oriented man of extraordinarily single-minded purpose. Stopping the Scarrans becomes Scorpius's prime mission in life. He says at various times how he wants revenge against the Scarrans. Well, who could blame him? He does achieve vengeance against Tauza, but he still desires to take action against the Scarrans. Stopping the Scarran threat is his only reason for wanting wormhole technology. Farscape shows us that villains are not born, they are created. Farscape's first villain, Crais, was ripped from his home and forced into the Peacekeepers. Scorpius was ripped into existence and shamelessly used by the Scarrans. For both, the need to survive drove them to serve the Peacekeepers. Circumstances drove both of them to anger and violence, though circumstances do not absolve them from responsibility for their actions. Crais redeemed himself, at least partially.
Starburst.
Scorpius has a longer road to redemption, and he never really gets there because he can never quite let go of his self-centered vindictiveness. But I am not kidding when I say I have sympathy for this devil. Tauza never broke Scorpius. He escaped, and his first mission was to learn about his parents. He went to the Peacekeepers seeking information, and they somewhat surprisingly obliged. In an act that went against our impression of a heartless Scorpius, he travels to the planet where his mother was abducted. It was an act of pure sentiment, rather endearing. When Tauza recaptures him and inflicts on him the scenes of his mother being raped, Scorpius breaks down in tears. Even many cycles later, at the end of Incubator, Scorpius shows soft-hearted feelings for his mother he never knew. His desire for revenge against the Scarans is not just for himself, but for his mother. But I also think Scorpius's fervent desire to stop the Scarans is also genuine concern for others, not just selfish anger. I am struck by Scorpius's reaction to Crais informing him that Crichton was plotting against him. That is the look of a person deeply hurt, of one who feels betrayed and bereft. When Crichton succeeds in destroying Scorpius's command carrier, Scorpius's reaction is also more hurt than anger. This doesn't make Scorpius a saint, but it shows he is more than a cartoon villain filled with nothing but hatred. He is practical in his single-minded purpose.
Death would serve no purpose, but your life might.
Not a sadist, but willing to be violent.
No, I can't. I can't.
Or compassionate, when he thought the situation called for it. I can't defend Scorpius's methods, but I can understand his motives.
He survived. He always survives.
That's true.
Scorpius's greatest talent is survival. He escaped the Scarans twice, he survived the destruction of his gamma base, he tricked Crais and Talon, he survived the destruction of his command carrier despite seemingly being willing to die, and he somehow survived being buried by Greza on Arnesk. His mission to stop the Scarans is a powerful motivator. He somehow manages to find Erin in the crucial episode Promises, and definitely saves her life, though clearly as a practical matter in service of his purpose. But Scorpius then becomes an inhabitant of Moya, a sort of member of the family who saves them in I Shrink Therefore I Am and Coup by Clam. Obviously, Scorpius is not the best ally in the world. He plays all sides in his efforts of, well, diplomatic engagement to reach his goal of stopping the Scarans.
Oh, I do admire your compartmentalization of duplicity.
It is admirable, if you admire sheer bullheaded tenacity. Scorpius does. The one thing he understands most is single-minded purpose. To the end, Scorpius wants to work with Crichton to stop the Scarans, and he is more hurt than angry when Crichton continually betrays him. Scorpius has only himself to blame for Crichton's distrust of him. One's strengths are also one's weaknesses, and that is very true for Scorpius. His single-minded tenacity keeps him alive, and eventually does assist Crichton in stopping the Scarans. But that same single-mindedness caused him to see Crichton only as a means to an end, and capturing and ripping the information out of Crichton as the only way to get it. Scorpius's bullheadedness kept a wedge between him and Crichton. Instead of threatening Crichton and Earth, he could have done a Hesmana a lot better in soliciting Crichton's cooperation. Interestingly, in the comic book episode Gone and Back Again, Scorpius, in an unrealized reality, does become allies and even friends with Crichton and the others on Moya in that reality. We briefly see another possibility for the Scorpius-Crichton relationship. In fact, the comic books reveal so much more of the Scorpius in our reality, but that will have to wait for another video. Suffice to say, though, that those books allow us to get inside Scorpius's mind and hear his thought process. Although old habits die hard, and he remains very single-minded. With the Scaran threat mitigated by the threat of Crichton's wormhole weapon, Scorpius's purpose becomes more self-centered on his own survival, and here too his ability to compartmentalize his duplicity leads him to surprising new alliances. I have no doubt we will see Scorpius again in the Farscape revival, if and when it comes. So, back to the question. Is Scorpius evil, and what can he tell us about the nature of evil? Well, first, how do we define evil? I mentioned cartoon evil, by which I mean a simplistic caricature that portrays evil as I'm going to get you and your little dog too stuff. Now that works for cartoons for young kids. And Scorpius isn't that. He isn't out to get anyone, doesn't seek to cause misery in others. He isn't that kind of evil. George Bernard Shaw had a character in his 1897 play, The Devil's Disciple, say this about evil, which I've long thought is truly brilliant. The worst sin toward our fellow creatures is not to hate them, but to be indifferent to them. That's the essence of inhumanity. If evil is indifference, then that is what Scorpius is guilty of. He sees others only in terms of whether they are useful for his purpose of stopping the Scarans. If he doesn't see you as useful, you don't exist to him. He won't go out of his way to harm you, but if you are harmed while he's achieving his objective, then you are just collateral damage. But in that, Scorpius, though evil, is quite human, all too human. Not an alien monster, but too much like ourselves. And just like in ourselves, there is also goodness in the devil Scorpius. It ultimately comes down to personal choices.
Main theme song for the Farscape show.
When I was a child, science fiction was constantly on television. Every day I felt transported to strange new worlds aboard the USS Enterprise, was witness to the epic space opera of Babylon 5, and embarked on adventures through the ancient Stargate. For me, science fiction was defined by these shows and their related movies. I believed I had a firm grasp on what was and what wasn't science fiction. That is until my eyes were opened to something far stranger and wonderfully weird. In the late 1970s, the Jim Henson Company made a splash with The Muppet Show. While they had previous success with Sesame Street, The Muppet Show was a hit with viewers of all ages, and led to the creation of a full-blown media and merchandising franchise. It was thanks to this revenue, Henson's company was able to push the boundaries of what was possible with puppetry and animatronics, culminating in the cult classic fantasy films The Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. The spin-off company Jim Henson's Creature Shop further lent its talents in this field to other feature films such as The Return to Oz, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Lost in Space. By the early 90s, Brian Henson became head of the Jim Henson Company after his father passed away in 1990. Unlike his father, Brian Henson was an enormous fan of science fiction, and wanted to create a TV show which could showcase the company's special effects skills. In his words, he wanted to create a show which was like the cantina from Star Wars but every single week. To create the show, Henson enlisted Rockne S. O'Bannon, who was no stranger to science fiction. O'Bannon had previously worked on the 80s revival of The Twilight Zone and had written the feature film Alien Nation. O'Bannon and Henson both agreed that the way into the alien world they sought to create was to see it through the eyes of an ordinary man from our own time. Thus they devised the premise of an astronaut named John Crichton who is caught in a wormhole and shot into deep space, where he encounters an ensemble of strange alien creatures. Originally the title of the show was Space Chase, then Far Horizons, which became Farspace, and finally Farscape. Initially the show was pitched to the Fox network, which had already seen great success with The X-Files, and wanted to develop another sci-fi series to complement the adventures of Mulder and Scully. Fox was receptive to Henson and O'Bannon's pitch, but ultimately chose to develop Space Above and Beyond instead of Farscape. Incidentally, Space Above and Beyond was cancelled after only one season. After Fox passed on Farscape, Henson and O'Bannon took the pitch to the Sci-Fi Channel. After building their brand mostly through reruns, the cable channel was looking to develop original shows, and the pitch for Farscape appealed to the head of the network greatly. According to a later Huffington Post interview with O'Bannon, he said, "The greatest words I've ever heard from the head of Sci-Fi were, just make it as weird as you can, because I don't just want a kids show." It took all the restraints off. However, without the financial support of a major network like Fox, Farscape, which would prove to be a hugely expensive show due to its elaborate special effects, would need to find a home outside of the USA. Canada was already home to Stargate SG-1, so most of the local crew with experience in special and visual effects were already occupied. For a while, Brian Henson looked at shooting the series in the UK, as the Creature Shop already had a base in London. In the end, Australia proved to be the best option. Not only did shooting in the country offer generous tax incentives, but also several experienced crew who had previously worked on The Matrix and Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace. The production was international in scope. Scripts would be written in Los Angeles, costumes, props, makeup and creature effects would be created in London, and filming would take place in Sydney. Also, because of the enormous expense of the series, the Sci-Fi Channel skipped over producing a pilot episode and instead committed to producing a full season right off the bat. Due to this relocation down under, only a single American actor was cast, Ben Browder as the lead, John Crichton. Browder's TV acting career began in the early 90s with a series of guest appearances on shows like Melrose Place and Murder, She Wrote before he landed a regular recurring role in the drama series Party of Five. Browder won the role of John Crichton out of over 200 applicants. There was a similarly large amount of candidates for the character Aaron Sun. While viewing audition tapes for Aaron and many other characters, Henson was quite taken by the voice he heard from off-camera feeding the auditioners lines. This voice belonged to Claudia Black, who was a friend of the casting director. Her off-camera presence in the audition tapes made quite an impression on the show's producers. Though her take on the character was quite different to what O'Bannon had in mind, it became obvious Claudia Black was the best choice for the character.
As we saw the actors relate to each other, we said, oh my god, they're like classic. They'll be able to spark off each other for 100 episodes.
And we connected so wholeheartedly in the room, something bizarre happened. And we did a great screen test together. And he was the one that said, you know, they had other choices, girls who were more attractive or whatever. And Ben said, no, Claudia's it. I want her.
Like Ben Browder, Claudia Black had mostly made guest appearances in various soap operas and police procedurals. She also made appearances on Hercules: The Legendary Journeys and later Xena Warrior Princess. After the first season of Farscape, she also appeared in the sci-fi horror film Pitch Black. To play the blue-skinned alien Zan, Virginia Hay was cast. After a successful modelling career, Hay's debut acting role was as the Warrior Woman in Mad Max 2 Road Warrior. After this, Hay led a successful career in film and TV, appearing in the Bond film The Living Daylights and the 80s revival of Mission Impossible. Another Mad Max veteran was Hugh Keys-Byrne, who auditioned for the Luxon warrior Ka Dargo. Keys-Byrne was later cast in the show as the businessman Grunschlick, but it was the towering Anthony Simcoe who landed the role of Dargo. Simcoe's only screen acting role before Farscape was in the Australian comedy film The Castle, but Simcoe had extensive experience acting on stage and performing music. New Zealand actor Lani Tupu also auditioned for Dargo, but was cast instead in the role of Bailar Crace. Tupu cut his teeth on stage in New Zealand before breaking into television in the series Country GP. He later moved to Australia, where he landed guest roles in the Harve Bennett created series Time Tracks and Mission Impossible, among many other shows. While the character of Dominar Rigel XVI would be created using puppetry and animatronics, the character's voice was provided by veteran of stage and screen Jonathan Hardy. Hardy would later appear in the series in person as the godlike Leviathan builder Kahenu. The cast was later joined by Gigi Edgley as Chiana. Initially only slated to appear in a single episode, the cast and crew liked her so much that she was upgraded to a recurring character and eventually a series regular. Filming took place primarily at Fox Studios Australia in Sydney. Like many sci-fi shows, several standing sets were constructed for the main setting, the living ship Moya. To communicate the vessel's organic nature, the art department designed many of the sets to resemble the inside of a ribcage, and avoided using the usual metallic colours of other fictional spaceships in favour of warmer earth and flesh tones. For the makeup effects, Anthony Simcoe was flown to London, where a full body cast was taken of the actor, and the Dargo makeup was modelled to his exact proportions. Initially, the makeup and costume were extremely restrictive, and so Simcoe concentrated his performance in the voice of the character.
And then one night I was home mucking around with friends doing my version of movie trailers. So I'd be doing things like, "It's here. Jim Henson Productions presents the most exciting series on television." And all stuff like that. And I thought, wow, I've got to go into work tomorrow and see whether I could possibly get away with doing my movie trailer voice as my Dargo voice. And I went into work and I said, "Andrew, Brian, I've come up with it. I've got the voice for Dargo. I think that Dargo should sound like this." And they're like, "No, absolutely not. He's not going to sound like that." And we actually didn't make a decision until we got on set, the very first day that I had to shoot as Dargo in the makeup. We still hadn't made a decision. Andrew Prowse, the director, was so busy with other things. I think I asked him at the right time because he had a million other things to think about, and I went up to him and I said, "Andrew, I really think that I should speak like this." And he's like, "All right, go do it." And so, bang, we rolled the cameras, I was on, and I started speaking like that, and that's how the voice of Dargo came around.
Virginia Hayes' makeup for Zan didn't require a body cast, as it was almost entirely made from face and body paint. However, Hay did have to shave off all of her hair and her eyebrows. She later said in interviews that she looked more freaky without the makeup. To bring Dominar Rigel to life, puppeteer John Eccleston operated the character's mouth movements in much the same way the Muppets were done. To articulate the lip movements, Eccleston used a belt-mounted joystick to create the various mouth shapes as he spoke Rigel's dialogue live on set. Additional puppeteers used remote control servos to control the character's other facial muscles, as well as his hand and arm. The enormous pilot required up to 8 puppeteers, 1 for head movements, 1 for mouth movements, 1 for eyes and eyebrows, and 1 puppeteer each for his arms. Pilot's final voice was provided by Lani Tupu, who reached the higher vocal pitch without any mechanical assistance. The actor devised a way of gradually working up to Pilot's higher pitch before each recording session, and stayed in the voice until all of Pilot's lines were recorded, after which additional filters were applied for the final voice. The on-set atmosphere of the show was markedly different to most sci-fi series productions. Star Trek and Babylon 5, for example, were produced with a strict adherence to the script. Actors changing lines or making suggestions about the story was frowned upon at best and contractually prohibited at worst. Farscape, however, being an Australian production far from Hollywood, had no such practices. This made Farscape an extremely collaborative show. In later audio commentaries, Claudia Black joked that even the studio's janitors got to voice their opinions on the scripts. While this contributed positively to the day-to-day working environment, it also played havoc with the show's schedule. Rockne S. O'Bannon, Brian Henson, and executive producer David Kemper frequently pulled long hours to finalize scripts which were being added to constantly, and lock cuts of episodes which often had to jettison huge chunks of material. In later commentaries, Ben Browder joked that David Kemper would often turn in 75-page scripts for 45-minute shows, and the directors, usually feature film veterans as opposed to TV directors, would turn in weeks of footage at a time. The production opted to use CGI rather than building miniatures for Moya, the Farscape 1 module, and all the other ships. By the late 90s, this was common practice ever since Babylon 5 broke new ground by pioneering the techniques on a television budget and schedule. However, in Australia there were no large visual effects companies. Those that did exist mostly worked on commercials as opposed to film and TV. Garner McLennan and his company Garner McLennan Design caught wind of the project and pursued the job. They enlisted the help of visual effects supervisor Paul Butterworth, though Butterworth later remarked in an interview for The Companion that at the time the job of a visual effects supervisor didn't even exist in Australia. Once they were given the job, Butterworth and McLennan effectively had to build their visual effects studio from scratch. In the Companion interview, Butterworth states that through their naive ambition, the team ended up delivering 1,800 shots for the first season, almost double the standard for shows like Star Trek or Babylon 5. For the music of the show, the producer hired Chris Neal on the recommendation of composer Matt Carroll of the musical group Subvision. Having viewed various designs and makeup tests during pre-production, Neal submitted a demo to the producers. Subvision was then hired to create the main theme and score the first season. Abigail Herman performed the vocals for the main melody, which were then multiplied and distorted for a truly alien sound. After years of development and a chaotic 10-month-long production, the first season of Farscape began airing on the 19th of March, 1999.
If you must address me, do so as your supreme eminence, which you should be doing anyway. I just punched myself.
From the very first frame, it's striking just how visually and sonically rich Farscape is. Even before Crichton is shot into deep space, the opening few scenes on Earth look more like something out of a feature film than a TV show. That being said, Crichton's introduction to this bizarre alien world packs plenty of impact by stacking the strange elements on top of one another. First is the wormhole, which uses a similar visual inspiration to Stargate's portals, only much more kinetic. Afterwards, Crichton finds himself drifting in an asteroid belt before being crashed into by a Peacekeeper prowler. But the truly alien nature of this part of space sinks in with the first shot of Moya, the circling prowlers used to convey the immense size of the Leviathan, and finally the introduction to the main cast, a trio of creatures with more diversity and design between them than most aliens seen in an entire season of Star Trek. All of it is underpinned by the appropriately otherworldly music, which doesn't resemble any recognizable instrument. This stream of surprises continues throughout this scene and the episode as a whole, particularly with Erin's introduction. At first, the presence of the black-suited prowler pilot signals danger, and as the pilot removes their helmet, the viewer, like Crichton, wonders what new monstrosity lurks beneath, only to see the very human face of Claudia Black. But letting down his guard only gets Crichton beaten to the ground and pinned in a strangely erotic fashion while Erin drills him with questions he has no hope of answering. In general, the characterization of the ensemble continues to evolve in surprising ways. Erin Sun goes from intimidating and militaristic in her first scene,
Officer Erin Sun, Special Peacekeeper Commando, Icarian Company, Plysar Regiment,
to cunning and facetious in the next.
I'd eat, if I were you.
Attention! We are approaching a continuous...
It may be the only chance we get.
And finally compassionate and convicted.
You know something about this alien?
Only that I have spent time with him, sir, and I believe him when he says that what happened to your brother was an accident.
And this is just one of the main characters in the first episode. One would expect that by the end of the premiere, the viewer would have a firm idea of who these characters are and the dynamic between them. However, as the first season continues, the surprises keep coming. The first few episodes of Farscape Season 1 are mostly standalone episodes built around familiar sci-fi series concepts. Time loops, planets of the week, ship in danger bottle episodes, these are all ideas which were already featured in the likes of Star Trek, and so Farscape, perhaps in a conscious effort by the writers, reuses these familiar tropes to clearly demonstrate what makes Farscape so different from those other shows. While most sci-fi shows portray characters in a military hierarchy, where each person's role aboard the ship or station is clearly defined, and everyone has received substantial training in a particular field, the crew of Moya have no such structure. They're simply a group of people thrown together by circumstance. Though they each have their own goals, there is no larger mission which unites them beyond simply evading the peacekeepers. Another huge departure is one of tone. Science fiction has long had a reputation as a genre more about technology than about people. Uniformed characters talking about starships or space anomalies and the like. Fans of these shows know that isn't the case, but it's easy to see why a casual viewer might see the likes of Star Trek or Babylon 5 as stuffy or stilted. Farscape, however, sets itself apart from these shows by being overtly weird and comedic. The cast has since said that they were encouraged in the early episodes to break the traditionally formal trappings of sci-fi and go for the gag whenever possible. Having a mostly Australian crew in the aforementioned collaborative working environment leads to a distinctly Aussie sense of humour throughout the series. That's not to say Farscape is devoid of serious drama or fascinating sci-fi concepts, far from it. The show's weirdness often facilitates these elements rather than hinders them. In Back and Back and Back to the Future, for example, the triangle of sexual tension between Dargo, guest character Matala, and Crichton contributes to the mind-bending temporal shenanigans of the plot. Crichton already has enough to deal with trying to wrap his head around the time loop only he is aware of. Add to that Matala trying to seduce him and Dargo threatening him to stay away from her, and he becomes so mixed up intellectually, emotionally, and even sensually that we get a real sense of his mind coming apart at the seams. It's very weird to watch, but that doesn't stop it from being compelling. Just like the show as a whole, the characters cannot be defined by any one thing, and don't fit into the usual tropes often seen in sci-fi. Ben Browder's John Crichton visually embodies the typical all-American pulpy space hero. This is why it's interesting to note that Crichton is not the action hero of the series. That role goes to Aaron. Instead, Crichton's intellect is emphasized. His expertise in astrophysics is what allows them to escape Crace in the first episode, yet he isn't the typical nerd archetype either. Crichton is a loud-mouthed, pop-culture referencing adrenaline junkie, but he's also a sensitive soul who wants to assume the best in people. Simply put, there is a hell of a lot more to John Crichton than a square jaw, and the same sentiment applies to the other main characters of the show. At first glance, Dargo is the typical warrior alien akin to Star Trek's Worf, but as it turns out, Dargo is a teenager among his people.
How old are you?
30 cycles.
You are but a boy.
I am not.
This small fact suddenly changes the context of all the usual warrior alien tropes. His aggression and bravado come from a place of insecurity. He is constantly trying to prove himself as the formidable Luxon warrior he appears to be. On top of this, the revelation that he's already a father at such a young age turns the entire character archetype on its head. This isn't a badass alien warrior who's there to drive the action scenes, but an insecure and frightened young man who's just trying to get his life together. Likewise, Zan's status as a priestess naturally makes her the conscience of the crew. She is often the one dispensing wisdom to the others. Yet there's also a strong sensuality to Virginia Hayes' performance, which adds an extra dimension to her scenes of quiet consoling with the other characters. Zan is also more than capable of dishing out considerable violence. This mix of sensuality and violence is folded into the character's backstory when it's revealed she used her psychic abilities to murder someone while they were intimate. Once again, the archetype is flipped on its head. To make another Star Trek comparison, Zan is not the Guinan of this group, but someone desperately searching for redemption for what she's done. And then there's Rigel, who is simply a wonderful creation, and like the rest, breaks with his expected archetype. The design of the character conveys a sense of illustriousness and quiet dignity, but in reality, Rigel is pompous, believing himself to be above his shipmates. He's often the butt of many jokes, but he's also cunning and resourceful, doing whatever it takes to stay alive, and dishing out revenge whenever the opportunity presents itself. The latter half of Season 1 is where Farscape truly comes into its own. First, the episode A Human Reaction breaks two unspoken rules when it comes to episodic television. Firstly, considering the premise of the show is Crichton trying to find a way home, seemingly paying this off within the first season is a bold choice to say the least. The viewer's natural suspicions that this could be a hallucination, dream, or some other form of unreality are gradually suppressed as the events unfold. The episode is diligent in not giving the game away, while still planting a few clues as to what's really going on. The second rule broken concerns the progression of the Crichton and Erin will they won't they romance. Whereas other shows would stretch this out for many seasons, Farscape conclusively states in its first season that they will indeed. The writers even made sure to clarify this in a later episode.
Right, and how many times have you and I been close?
And despite the revelation that Crichton hasn't returned to Earth effectively unbreaking the first rule, this is easily the most consequential episode of the entire series, as it kicks off the main story arc of the show. Which brings us to the introduction of Scorpius. Up until this point, Crais has functioned as the show's main antagonist, but he is easily topped by Wayne Pygram's Scorpius in his first scene.
I am Scorpius.
But of course you are.
You attempt to provoke me. Perhaps you're hoping I will lose my composure and kill you. I long ago learned the advantages of patience.
What makes Scorpius so instantly memorable is a sense of the uncanny. The costume and makeup design blends the sexual and grotesque into one monstrous form, but it's Pygram's choice to speak in a high-pitched, refined accent which makes the character so unsettling. We're seeing one thing but hearing another. And while Crais posed a deadly threat to Crichton, the threat posed by Scorpius goes beyond that. Scorpius is physically strong, but it's pretty apparent Dargo or Erin could best him in a fair fight, and Scorpius rarely even carries a weapon. Scorpius doesn't win by killing people, he wins by breaking people. Whereas being caught by Crais would signal the end for John Crichton, being caught by Scorpius would only be the beginning of the horrors to come. The cat and mouse game which ensues culminates in a stunning cliffhanger finale, which sees Crais taking command of Moya's hybrid offspring, and the main characters broken up and marooned. This was a brave note to end the first season on, considering a renewal for a second was by no means guaranteed. While its US ratings were mediocre, the series was an international success. The show was produced by the Sci-Fi Channel, but it aired almost simultaneously on YTV in Canada, 9 Network in Australia, and BBC Two in the UK. This allowed Farscape to accrue a passionate cult fanbase in its first year, small in size in any one country, but impressive worldwide. The show was also well liked by Sci-Fi Channel executives, who enjoyed having an original series for the channel which wasn't simply a copy of other established shows. Willing to roll the dice once again, Farscape was renewed for a second season. This renewal didn't come without problems, however. As Farscape was about to re-enter production, Fox Studios Australia decided not to renew its contract with the series. Instead, the studio was given over to the production of Star Wars Episode II: Attack of the Clones. As a result, Farscape had to completely uproot and move to a new facility in Homebush, Sydney. This was not a purpose-built film studio, and so the cast had to re-record up to 90% of their dialogue in each episode due to poor sound on set. According to the aforementioned companion articles, there was also some studio politics at play which harmed the production. Subvision member Chris Beale later said he believed Sci-Fi Channel was trying to exert more control over the show, resulting in numerous crew members either leaving the series or being let go. This was the case with Garner McLennan's team, who were replaced by the visual effects studio Animal Logic, and with Subvision itself. According to Beale, the music department was told to make their scores bigger and more orchestral, which didn't gel with Subvision's usual style or what they had done on the series thus far. Therefore, they were let go, and composer Guy Gross was brought in to take over scoring the series. Season 2 runs with all of the strengths of Season 1, feeling much more confident in its identity. Standalone episodes aren't just new spins on familiar tropes, but uniquely weird in the way only Farscape can be, and always centered on the characters. These are episodes like the fan-favourite Crackers Don't Matter, in which an alien called Traltix boards Moya as the ship passes through a binary star system. Soon after, everyone goes partially insane as they all become convinced each one of them is stealing and hoarding a recent shipment of crackers, except Zan, who, being a plant, spends most of the episode having photogasms. Between Scorpius-fueled hallucinations, Crichton runs around trying to convince everyone that Traltix is messing with their minds in some way.
Thank you, so much better!
You missed! Ah!
The episode concludes with Crichton confronting Traltix while covered in puke.
We are going to die.
Crackers Don't Matter is an incredible demonstration of Farscape's command of tone. There's plenty of comedy mined from each character's strange behaviour, but there are also disturbing moments such as Dargo nearly killing Rigel by force-feeding him crackers.
I am ashamed of what I did.
I thought you were going to kill me.
Can you forgive me?
No. Not yet.
It's simultaneously one of the most hysterically funny and strange Farscape episodes, while also being one of the most poignant. When it comes to emotionally moving the audience, however, no episode in Season 2 does this better than The Way We Weren't. After the crew discovers a recording of Aaron executing Moya's original pilot, the others debate if they should keep her on the ship, while she is left to wrestle with her guilt. Claudia Black is instantly iconic as Aaron Sun from the very first episode. Not only does she look great wielding big guns in button-down action hero clothes, but also kitted out in various leather jackets and trench coats. But Aaron is by no means one note. Black's considerable comedy chops also add a lot of charm and humour to Aaron's character, with a flurry of badass one-liners, witty comebacks, and terrific insults.
Don't feel bad, it's not you, it's me. I don't like you.
Never received it.
But The Way We Weren't is the first time we see the character truly vulnerable, as she breaks down from the guilt over her past actions. It's in this episode that Aaron becomes a part of the Moya family, as opposed to being there simply through circumstance. At first, her past isolates her from the rest of the crew, but in the episode's climax, her bond with the others is strengthened after Pilot reveals their culpability in what happened as well.
Do you remember when you first came aboard, Moya? Elric stroked your cheek like this to calm you. Back then I couldn't fathom why he'd do a thing like that. And now I couldn't fathom not doing it. We've come a long way since then, Pilot. And we've still got a long way to go. Take the journey with me.
It's a testament to all aspects of Farscape's production that despite all of the weirdness, Farscape triumphantly succeeds in telling profoundly moving human stories. The majority of Season 2, however, is dominated by Scorpius' pursuit of Crichton for the wormhole knowledge in his head. Plot-wise, this cat-and-mouse game across the stars facilitates a never-ending stream of traps, double-crosses, and action set-pieces, which fill episodes to the brim with excitement and thrills. A highlight of these comes in the three-parter Look at the Princess, where Crichton is cornered by Scorpius' underling, Braca, only for Crichton to completely reverse the situation by using himself as a meat shield.
One wound, I bleed out. Oh, Officer Braca, what the hell happened? Fine, let's do it then. Let's do this thing. Come on, shoot me. Right here, right here. Go. Oh, no, not the brain. He wants the brain. The heart. Here. Heart. Here. John Wayne Bobbitt, Vienna Boys Choir.
Before madly punching controls and activating weapons, so the surrounding orbital defenses will open fire on the very spacecraft he is currently on.
We're so screwed, Ian. We're gonna die.
And finally propelling himself through the vacuum of space using a pulse rifle to reach safety. A stunning action set piece and a great showcase of Browder's increasingly unhinged portrayal of Crichton. But the substance of Crichton's battle of wits with Scorpius comes from the undeniable sexual overtones which permeate their relationship. It's by no means an accident that Scorpius and his entourage wear costumes resembling fetish gear. After all, Scorpius's main method of interrogation is to restrain his victims and break down their mental and emotional barriers. Scorpius doesn't simply want to capture Crichton, but to use him, to dominate him psychologically and physically. Scorpius does not hate Crichton, in fact he cares deeply for Crichton's well-being, but only as a tool he can use. I'd go into more detail about this, but unfortunately doing so ventures into areas YouTube doesn't really like. So if you want to see these retrospectives uncut and ad-free, the link to my Patreon is below this video. Knowing they had gold on their hands with Wayne Pygram's performance as the character, the writers needed a way of including Scorpius in as many episodes as possible, but without making the character seem incompetent in the number of times Crichton escapes his grasp. Thus the neural clone known as Harvey was created. Harvey's inclusion was yet another way of amping up the show's weirdness factor, with entire scenes playing out within Crichton's warped mind. Farscape in general places a lot of emphasis on Crichton's mental and emotional state throughout the series. It's worth remembering Crichton's background is as a scientist, not a soldier or an operative. Therefore, when he is repeatedly subjected to life and death situations over the course of the series, it takes a real toll on the character. At times, Crichton veers completely into utter insanity in episodes such as Won't Get Fooled Again and the later Revenging Angel. It seems just as Crichton was getting used to his alien surroundings, reality itself starts to crumble around him. What makes Scorpius' inclusion in all of this so frightening is the sense that as Crichton loses control of his own mind, Scorpius asserts more control. Scorpius' domination of Crichton is what drives the shocking finale of Season 2. After the 3-part action extravaganza, Liars, Guns and Money, Crichton's mind is at breaking point.
You're right, Aaron. There's no Scorpius here.
In true Farscape fashion, the show gives fans what they've been yearning for, only to twist it into something else.
I love you.
But what makes the final episode so shocking is the death of Aaron's son. The scene itself is gut-wrenching as Crichton watches helplessly as Aaron drowns in the icy cold water.
Crichton! Crichton!
However, it's the aftermath which drives home the tragedy. Once again, the writers know the audience expects this death to be a fake-out, and so draws out Aaron's requiem, with each of the characters placing a parting gift within her capsule, typified by Dargo giving up his Quelta blade. As the audience is immersed in the tragedy, the end of the episode moves into horror territory as Scorpius corners Crichton and finally obtains the wormhole knowledge he's been after. Having reached the end of his usefulness, Scorpius leaves Crichton paralysed, unable to speak, and with his brain exposed. The end of Season 2 is a jaw-dropping cliffhanger.
I do remember that. Oh my gosh.
Thankfully, the continued goodwill towards the show and international success ensured Farscape's renewal for a 3rd season. However, its middling ratings compared to the huge expense of the series was putting its future on thin ice. This wasn't helped by the increasing complexity of its ongoing storylines and the density of the show's lore. Though Farscape continued to feature episodic stories, it would be inaccurate to call any future episode truly standalone. Almost every episode relied on knowledge of past events to an extent that Crichton's opening voiceover didn't come close to encapsulating. The series was available on DVD by this point, but the lack of syndication hampered new viewers' ability to give Farscape a go. In an attempt to bring the show to a new audience and increase ratings, Sci-Fi Channel produced the documentary special Farscape Undressed, as a way of explaining the show to new viewers. Season 3 also came with a new opening credit sequence and a new theme, composed by Guy Gross. Gross's new theme for Farscape Season 3 is a spectacular achievement. The piece perfectly unites the two musical styles, preserving Subvision's tribal beats and weird vocals, but with an orchestral sweep to sonically illustrate the darker and more epic direction of the show. Despite many strengths in Season 3, Erin's resurrection is somewhat contrived and rushed. Mechanically, it's essentially magic. Zan uses her powers to find Erin's soul and restore it to her body. Erin's comeback is fittingly badass, using Dargo's Quilterblade to fend off some Peacekeeper commandos right out of the coffin, but Crichton's reunion with Erin isn't given the emotional heft it should have had. Although Erin's resurrection proved to be inevitable, the crew still sustains a loss in the form of Zan's departure. Virginia Hay leaving the show came as quite a shock to the makers and fans of the show, but Hay later explained in interviews that her chief reason was her health.
I was experiencing some problems about 3 months into shooting the first season, and I went to the doctor. He phoned me at work a week later and he said, it's kind of funny, I mean it's awful but it's funny. He said, the lab just called me, it's about your test, your urine test. What is it that you're doing? Are you working in a pesticide factory? Because they've found so many chemicals in your urine that they can't quite figure out what you're doing. Are you working in a paint factory? What are you doing? Oh, I'm an actress and I'm working on a sci-fi show and I'm in blue prosthetic makeup. He went, what? Come and show me what you're doing. So I took a photograph and he said, oh my God, that's why you should leave this show immediately. I said, I can't do that. I've just started. I love the character. He said, but this is insane. Just, what are you putting into your body? It's just insanity. And you do this for a long period of time. For a film, it's okay. You can really put your body through a lot of grief for 3 or 4 or 5 months, or even 6 months. You really can. And it'll bounce back. But year after year is a whole other story. But I was really falling apart, getting pretty much everything that went. My immune system was just a mess. Constantly and so ill. And I just thought, the doctors that I was seeing at one of the hospitals near the studio were just saying, why are you doing this? I'd say, well, she's a beautiful character, but she's fictitious, Virginia. She's not real. Yeah, but she's real to me. No, but you are really damaging your health. Why would you want to damage your health for a job?
While the crew are joined by new characters like Tammy McIntosh's Jewel, Zan's loss is keenly felt throughout the rest of the season, which sees the Moya crew venturing into darker territory than ever before. The show expands in scope, leaning into the looming threat of a war between the tyrannical Peacekeepers and the monstrous Scarans. Although the Peacekeepers are hardly a force for good with their fascistic ideology and interstellar police state, next to the Scarans they seem positively utopian. In episodes like the Scorpius-centric Incubator, we see firsthand the cruelty of the Scarans. In a sense, they represent a similar threat posed by Scorpius himself, but on a galactic scale. The Scarans see other species as mere tools to be used for their ends, as slave labour, food sources, or even breeding stock. Up until this point, the Scarans were mostly kept to the background, but Season 3 carries a sense that this looming conflict will soon be coming to a head. This darkness even permeates usually episodic outings. Seemingly weird one-off incidents like Crichton being split into 2 people result in a powerful character-driven arc for the season. When the characters are split between Moya and Talon, Erin's romance with one of the Crichtons reaches a tragic end when this Crichton dies of radiation poisoning while stopping the Scarans from obtaining wormhole technology.
I don't hurt. I did some good things. I'm proud of my life. Don't worry about me. I've never felt better.
What brush am I using? I'm using a Derwent Academy brush. It's just a nice rounded brush. I'm experimenting with trying to produce
This
a little bit
death
of a
marks
leather
the
texture.
beginning of the show's darkest chapter, as the relationships of the characters rapidly
I'm going to be going back
disintegrate.
into it with other
Not only does Crichton's
mediums,
death
but I'm
shatter
just
the
providing
possibility
a
of
little bit
relationship
of a-
between Aaron and the remaining Crichton,
I
but
wanna
there's
have that
also
kind of
Chiana's
leathery look,
infidelity with
right?
Dargo's son, and Talon's debilitating illness, rendering him unable to distinguish friend from foe.
You have not disappointed me. I don't hold you responsible.
And so one way I could do that was kind of almost with a dry
Neither
brush.
does Moya.
On
the contrary, Talon,
resembles hash marks.
you are
Yes,
very
yeah.
brave.
Absolutely.
With everything coming apart at the seams, the season finale functions as the ultimate Hail Mary. Crichton chooses to stop running and give Scorpius his wormhole knowledge in exchange for unconditional pardons for everyone else, though in reality he's there to sabotage the project. It's a high-stakes battle of wits where any wrong move could spell the end for everyone. Even Scorpius isn't safe when he's put under the thumb of Rebecca Riggs's Commandant Grazer, forcing Scorpius to threaten Earth itself if Crichton doesn't give him results.
What do you think holding a freaking gun on my planet is gonna motivate me to help you? I have run out of time!
But it's Krace who emerges as the unlikeliest of heroes. Lani Tupu's performance as the character has always been one of the show's highlights. Despite being the principal antagonist in the first half of Season 1, Krace is a deeply sympathetic character. Unlike Scorpius and Grazer, his hunt for Crichton was driven by personal trauma at the death of his brother. By the time Scorpius is introduced, it's clear Krace has overstepped, and he becomes a victim of Scorpius and the Peacekeeper power structures just like Crichton and Aaron. His surrender to Crichton at the end of Season 1 can be seen as the start of a redemption arc of sorts for the character, but it's redemption the Moya crew refused to give him, forcing him to ally with Talon just to survive. During their time living aboard Talon, Crichton and Aaron never fully forgive Krace for his past actions, but it becomes clear he's no longer their enemy. It's worth noting Krace never bullies Talon into submitting to his control, but rather Talon bonds himself to Krace willingly. It's never said explicitly in the show, but Talon essentially becomes a new surrogate brother for Krace. Krace having lost everything that ever mattered to him, and Talon feeling scared and alone due to his hybrid nature, only have each other to count on. This is why it's so fitting that they go out together as brothers, committing one final selfless act.
Talon. Starburst.
Generations will know that name. Because of you, the Scannons will destroy us. One evil at a time. If we're gonna get off this boat, now would be a good time. I may not be getting off this ship, John. Goodbye, Crichton.
Pilot is a creature of his word. We have not moved 1 metra. We're just drifting.
Sure, he dropped something.
Spewing.
For the next season of Farscape, Brian Henson sought to make a 4th and 5th season in a single package, therefore reining in the expense of the series. While the Sci-Fi Channel tentatively agreed to this, they made sure to retain the ability to axe the show should it go over budget. This sword of Damocles now hanging over the show came as a result of Farscape no longer being the Sci-Fi Channel's only hit original. By this time, Stargate SG-1, which originally aired on Showtime, had been picked up by the Sci-Fi Channel and was outperforming Farscape in the ratings, while also being much cheaper to produce. Though Farscape was still well liked by sci-fi execs, it was no longer the channel's flagship series. Season 4 kicks off with the situation more desperate than ever, with the crew scattered and Crichton marooned on a dying Leviathan. There he meets the new recurring character Sikozu, played by Rayleigh Hill, and later rejoined by Melissa Jaffer's Noranti, who was introduced at the end of Season 3. The first half of Farscape Season 4 struggles somewhat as the Moya crew are slowly reunited. It feels as if the show is bending over backwards to return to the usual status quo. The pardons each character received at the end of Season 3 are suddenly revoked, and Crichton et al. Are once again on the run from the Peacekeepers, this time led by Grayza, who seek the wormhole knowledge in Crichton's head. There are a few too many resets here, as if the writers realised they had essentially written themselves into the story's conclusion too early. Not only are the characters made fugitives once again, but Aaron and Crichton's relationship is at an impasse again, and smaller elements like Harvey are supposedly done away with, only to come back later on. New additions to the show are also controversial, namely Scorpius joining the Moya crew. Having been the chief villain for most of the show up until this point, it's quite a leap to bring the character onto Moya like this. Considering the amount of emotional, psychological, and physical damage Scorpius inflicted on Crichton and the others, the notion that he would even be allowed to set foot on Moya and that Aaron would defend him after he saved her life is difficult to buy. The writers take a good stab at making it work, but this turn of events never feels truly believable. I feel Scorpius met a fitting end in Season 3, but it seems fan and creator enthusiasm for the character couldn't let Scorpius die. Make no mistake, Season 4 is by no means a failure because of this, and Wayne Pygram continues to excel in the role, but even Pygram was aware of how the character was being misused here.
Season 4 was probably, for me, my most problematic year. By bringing me on board Moya, created a lot of problems for me as an actor. I found myself in situations where I knew that I shouldn't be privy to particular conversations or be in a room at a particular time, and I found it, I felt in my acting, and it's been confirmed since I watched the episodes, that my acting style and he got more naturalistic and more human. So we got away from him, his magic, I thought.
Thankfully, the latter half of the season gets things back on track with the mind-bending, unrealised reality.
Time.
Sup?
Time.
Flies.
Time.
Bandits.
Time.
Wounds are healed.
Time.
Rosemary and time's up.
What was clearly intended as a semi-clip show to save money takes on a life of its own as a trippy, labyrinthine journey through multiple timelines which, in true Farscape fashion, takes every opportunity to be as weird as possible, notably with a bizarro version of Moya where each character is played by one of the other actors with hysterical results. But after all this time-bending, it's the closing minutes which prove to be the most surprising. Having been lost in deep space for over 3 years, Crichton finally returns home to find it is not the same world he left, nor is he the same person. While not remotely as morbid as Crichton's original vision of returning home, the two-parter Kansas and Terra Firma are both mined extensively for as much rich drama as possible. In a stroke of brilliance, it is now Crichton's home planet, which seems so alien to him. The familiar surroundings, the mundanity of domestic life, it all seems strange following the 3.5 seasons worth of fantastical adventures. Crichton has not only become a stranger to his own home, but he's also been so damaged by past events that the long-awaited family reunion becomes a tense standoff rather than a loving embrace. This tension is finally broken when Crichton and Aaron fend off an assassin sent by Grayza, and it becomes clear Crichton can no longer call Earth his home.
I can't shake this feeling that you're not coming back.
I'll be back. That's a promise. You take care of my home.
Rounding out the season is the 3-part epic We're So Screwed, which cranks up the number of double crosses, standoffs, and action set pieces to a near ludicrous degree. The final few episodes of the season also feel overstuffed at times, rushing through crucial story points and introducing and paying off brand new pieces of world building. Erin goes from being heavily traumatized by her torture at the hands of the Scarans.
Gosh, the background's finally dry. Holy cow, really?
It's real. You're safe.
To quipping and joking alongside Crichton in the very next episode.
What are you doing here? Come out, now!
There's never enough time.
The final episode of the season almost skips over its setup entirely, flashing back and montaging through scenes which were no doubt written and shot, but severely cut down for time. There's also the introduction of a Kalish resistance, Sikozu's genetically engineered Scaran killing abilities, and the Scarans largely owing their intelligence to the consumption of a particular plant. It's a lot to take in, as several long-established plot and story threads also come to a head in the same few episodes. That being said, the final episode of the season, Bad Timing, ties the year off brilliantly. Though the opening few minutes are whiplash-inducing, the race to close the wormhole to Earth is full of tension, and capped off with a moving scene of Crichton saying goodbye to his father forever.
The heart and soul of my life, son. I love you.
This emotional resonance extends to the final scene of the episode, as Crichton and Erin finally agree to be together forever. Ben Browder and Claudia Black's terrific chemistry is one of the consistent highlights of Farscape. It's tempting to say they bicker like an old married couple even from the first episode, but it's more than that. There's an undeniable passion between them which is sometimes expressed healthily, but often expressed unhealthily. They are both drawn to each other from the start. Crichton is drawn to Erin as she's the only human-like face he encounters in this part of the galaxy, and Erin is drawn to Crichton because he's unlike anyone she's ever met. And to put this bluntly, Crichton and Erin are both really hot, and the early episodes take every opportunity to put the two in suggestive body positions, partly to play up the tension between them, but also to tease the audience in a way. The viewer is shown repeatedly how perfect these two look as a couple, making their series-spanning romance seem inevitable from the outset. But their connection is more than skin deep. They are the catalysts of each other's emotional arcs. Erin was raised in a culture where emotion was seen as weakness, but she learns from Crichton that it's okay to be vulnerable. Crichton, meanwhile, begins the series as a wide-eyed explorer, but his many traumas end up forcing him to shut down and close himself off, or disconnect entirely from reality rather than face his pain. These mirrored arcs clearly illustrate why these two need each other. Erin needs Crichton because he's the only one she can truly open up to, and Crichton needs Erin to keep him grounded. This is why the end of Season 4 is so heartbreaking, because after everything they've endured, these two finally have a future together.
Will you marry me?
But then...
John! Erin! Get inside!
You and your timing.
I love you.
And it's on this devastating cliffhanger that Farscape was cancelled.
Isn't that horrible? That's so horrible!
I was at a convention in, excuse me, Las Vegas. And a fan came up to me and said, all bright and cheery, how do you feel about the show being cancelled? I went, I'm sorry, just say that again, please. And they said, oh, you haven't heard? I said, no. Is there something I should know?
We knew that things were going rocky, but then we thought he'd sort of saved it at the last minute. And I think, as Brian explained to me, he did too. Right up to the last second, he went to bed the night before thinking it was sorted that season 5 was going to go ahead, and then woke up and it was gone.
My last day of shooting, which was, I think, a Thursday, I said to Dave and Colin, remember today, boys, it could be the last time we do this. This could be the last time I have this makeup on. And they just went, you're mad. Forget it. You'll be doing this for the rest of your life. That was the last day.
I could understand how it happened. Sci-fi would say, we can't afford it. Maybe we'll do a half season. They wanted to do a half season. Well, now the international investors, the MTV, were going, oh, we don't have to do a whole season? Well, we're not sure we're not contractually obligated to do a half season. It was one of these where it was a house of cards, a financing house of cards that I was trying to hold together that kept tripping, it kept falling over here and it was falling over here. And I'd go on set and, the cast and the creative they'd be saying, are we on or are we off? And I'd say, looks like we're really on for season 5. So I'm sorry I scared everybody. I think we're on. And then 2 days later, it'd be, I think we're off. I can't believe it, but I think we're off. And then 2 days later, I think we're on. And 2 days later, I think all those people were so emotionally beat up by the end. I felt awful. And it was me trying to put together this financing house of cards that did turn out to be a collapsing house of cards. So it was really tough, And at the last moment, we had a wrap party that became a wrap party for the series instead of a wrap party for the season. And we had an episode that finished with a cliffhanger. And should we try to rework it so there's not a cliffhanger? No, we decided in the end. We decided, you know what, this is the way Farscape ended. It ended with a weird to be continued, so we're going to end the last episode with to be continued. The broadcasters were not very happy about that.
Following Farscape's cancellation in September 2002, Farscape fans did what seemingly all sci-fi fan bases do at some point in their lives. They started a massive campaign to bring the show back. Coordinated from the official Farscape fan website, the Save Farscape campaign sent a deluge of letters and emails to the Sci-Fi Channel, as well as numerous other networks to renew the series for a 5th season. While none of this changed the financial position the Sci-Fi Channel was in regarding the series, such a display of fan enthusiasm for Farscape allowed Henson to find financial backing from other sources.
What ended up happening was the financiers of the miniseries are not normally television financiers, and they saw this underground sort of thing going on with Farscape, bring it back, and then they became acquainted with the series, and then they were saying, we'd quite like to talk to you about helping to continue this thing. That was just amazing, and it took a little while to pull that whole deal together. But if it hadn't been for the Save Farscape movement, Farscape we would have stopped at the end of season 4.
Partly backed by Hallmark Entertainment, Farscape was officially renewed in May 2004 as a 3-hour miniseries titled The Peacekeeper Wars, which would round off the series as a whole. Production once again took place in Australia, with Rockne S. O'Bannon and David Kemper writing the screenplay, and Brian Henson stepping into the director's chair. Guy Gross reprised his role as composer for the miniseries, however this time he had the privilege of working with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, rather than the digital facsimile he had used for the series. However, most of the post-production sound team had to be replaced, as well as the on-set makeup team. When it came to replicating the looks of the various characters, the makeup team had tremendous difficulty with Noranti. Melissa Jaffer had a severe reaction to the new makeup, and was unable to film most of her scenes. There was an attempt at using actress Amanda Wenban to stand in for the character while Jaffer provided the voice, but the difference was too noticeable. Therefore, Noranti's role in the miniseries was cut down massively. Most other regular and recurring cast members returned, except Virginia Hay as Zan, who was offered a cameo but she declined. After a 2-year wait, Farscape The Peacekeeper Wars premiered on the Sci-Fi Channel on the 18th of October 2004. Having finally transformed into a full-on space opera, Farscape The Peacekeeper Wars takes on an epic cinematic feel, opening with a visually stunning space battle and bombastic orchestral score. The comparatively larger budget is reflected on screen, with large-scale sets and expansive locations, which Brian Henson makes sure to capture in spectacular wide shots. It's the familiar Farscape universe, but not as we've seen it before. The epic sweep of the miniseries also helps compensate for the areas where the miniseries has had to compress a season's worth of intended stories into only 3 hours. These are elements like the magical peacemaking aliens and Erin's truncated pregnancy. These accelerations are contrived, but they generally work. They build on established Farscape lore and perfectly embody the show's signature weirdness, with Rigel carrying Crichton's child for much of the runtime, being used not only as a comedic goldmine, but also as a source of genuine tension. However, at times there can be so much going on in the miniseries that certain characters become lost in the shuffle. For example, Jules' considerable change in personality and expanded skill set isn't afforded much time for exploration before she and the priests of Arnesk are brutally annihilated by the Scarran Emperor. Scorpius is another such casualty, as with much of Season 4, there's a sense he's overstayed his presence in the story. He resembles more of an anti-hero in the Peacekeeper Wars, as opposed to the revenge-driven monster he excelled as. His silent nodding of approval as the Scarrans and Peacekeepers sign a treaty at the end seems especially out of character. All that being said, the fast pace of the miniseries does work for the most part. In condensing a season's worth of stories into 3 hours, there's a greater sense of finality to the miniseries. Perhaps in tribute to the fans of the series, much of the Peacekeeper Wars feels like a victory lap. Almost every recurring character makes an appearance, serving as their last hurrah before the end. Scenes which could have felt like fan service feel earned, such as Erin giving birth while wielding a pulse rifle in the middle of a battle, and the entire main cast triumphantly blasting their way through the Scarran army as Guy Gross's score kicks into high gear. The bold story turns come one after another, such as Jules' aforementioned death, but it's Dargo's heroic end which packs the heaviest punch.
It's gonna get ugly here soon. You better get going. You're the closest friend I have. You could have done better. Now we're in the universe.
Dargo may have began the series as an insecure teenager, but over the course of the series he proved himself. His emotions are always strong, but he became the one person everybody could count on. Dargo never lied to the Moya crew, never deserted his post, and never put his own desires above others, which can't honestly be said for the rest of the crew. But much like Crichton and Erin's end in bad timing, Dargo's death feels so tragic because after everything he's been through, his life was finally starting to come together. His relationships with Shiana and his son Jothi are finally repaired, and it looks like at long last he has a future to look forward to. But in this final battle, it's all ripped away.
I'll find you. Come on, I'll find you. The first Scarran you see, you tell him who his daddy is. Tell him, Dargo!
Yet in his final moments, he fully embodies the proud and heroic Luxan warrior he always aspired to be. The standout sequence of the miniseries, however, is easily the climax, where Crichton, backed into a corner with no options left, finally summons the long-sought-after wormhole weapon. The scene builds slowly. The eerie music and slow pace convey a sense that these characters have crossed a dangerous cosmic threshold they may not be able to step back from.
Isn't that sweet? Baby's gonna grow.
As the singularity grows, its sheer power is made clear as it rips through both Scarran and Peacekeeper fleets, as well as the planet below. The leaders of both fleets, totally self-assured at first, soon become indignant as the gravity well grows. Finally, Greza and the Scarran Emperor can only watch in stunned silence, finally comprehending the magnitude of what they arrogantly believed they could control.
Wormhole weapons do not make peace. Wormhole weapons don't even make war. They make total destruction.
Wormhole doubles 2 more times,
Moya goes first. 20 seconds later, you join us. Either way, this war is over.
For the sake of our children, I will agree to a settlement.
The fallout of this event is allowed to linger throughout the conclusion, as a comatose Crichton finally says goodbye to Harvey and reawakens to his newborn child. It's a sequence which aptly symbolises the rebirth of the galaxy itself, as it enters a new era of peace. After all the running, fighting and death, Crichton and Erin are finally given their fairy tale ending, and it's fair to say they earned it. The Peacekeeper Wars may stumble in some places, but ultimately it succeeds as the triumphant ending Farscape fans had hoped for.
This is your playground.
Farscape occupies a strange place in pop culture. Despite once being hailed as the Sci-Fi Channel's flagship show, and despite being enjoyed by dedicated viewers across the world, Farscape has never truly broken into the mainstream the way other sci-fi shows of this era have. Star Trek is a pop culture juggernaut, Stargate's iconography is recognisable to many, and even Babylon 5 is praised by mainstream publications for its pioneering production techniques and narrative ambition. But Farscape seems destined for cult success only. The story of Farscape was continued in a series of comic books by Boom Studios, and Brian Henson frequently entertained the idea of bringing the saga to the big screen, but the former never found an audience outside of pre-existing fans, and the latter will likely never materialise. Attempts at other spin-off media like video games, tabletop RPGs and novels either flopped or failed to take off. Farscape was perhaps too weird and too dense for its own good. At a time when science fiction on the small screen was undergoing a major transformation, the series got lost in the shuffle in its initial run and seemed virtually impenetrable to newcomers in syndication. Farscape may never have crossed into the mainstream, but within sci-fi circles, it continues to be a highly acclaimed and respected show to this day. Farscape's biggest pop culture impact is most apparent in James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. Gunn even went to the effort of including Ben Browder in a small cameo as a nod to the influence Farscape had on his films. Some may say that the success of Guardians of the Galaxy is evidence that Farscape was simply ahead of its time, but I'm not sure there was a time for Farscape. Farscape is something special and unique, a mythos which flies in the face of genre conventions and TV traditions, and looks like it's having a blast while doing so. It has an infectious and strange energy which cannot be found anywhere else, even within the works it inspired. It may not have been a crossover hit, but it will always find its fans, and fans will always love it, because there's simply nothing else quite like Farscape.
I am Scorpius, but of course you are.
We must increase the efficiency of the Aurora Chair.
This deja vu all over again.
Fetch the comfy chair. Stop resisting the Aurora Chair. Fetch the comfy chair. Stop resisting the Aurora 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 Chair. Allow us to probe freely. Increase the efficiency of the Aurora Chair. Stop resisting 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 the Aurora Chair. Allow us to probe freely. Stop resisting the Aurora Chair. Stop resisting the Aurora Chair. Allow us to probe freely. 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 For an information window.
No. Cannot access this data consciousness. Unconscious knowledge will guide you.
Bedrock physical expressions were epic, really full of different emotions and pain. Absolutely.
We'll remember this part of our encounter.
Sounds good video.
Segment his mind. Segment his mind. Segment his mind as many layers as it takes.
All over again.
Segment his mind as many layers as it takes. And then we'll start again. And then we'll start again. Segment his mind. Segment his mind. As many layers as it takes. Segment his mind. Segment his mind.
Talking about Scorpius' chair.
A short recuperation. And then we'll start again. Scorpius puts me in the chair. A short recuperation. A short recuperation. And then we'll start again.
All over again.
Stop resisting the Aurora Chair. Stop resisting the Aurora Chair. Stop resisting the Aurora Chair. Stop resisting the Aurora Chair.
That's the comfort chair.
Stop resisting the Aurora Chair. Stop resisting the Aurora Chair. Allow us to probe freely.
Comfort chair.
Stop resisting the Aurora Chair. Stop resisting the Aurora Chair. Allow us to probe freely.
All over again.
Allow us to probe freely. For an information window. Scorpius puts me in the chair. Scorpius puts me in the chair.
This deja vu all over again.
It was a 7-year mission that created a 4-year mission to be the anti-Star Trek, a showcase for the mastery of technical abilities that no one else in the galaxy was capable of, the direct result of mixing a little bit of dino DNA into your Ninja Turtles. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Farscape. Farscape is a live-action science fiction television series that aired 88 episodes over 4 seasons from March of 1999 through March of 2003. Produced by the Jim Henson Company, it was Sci-Fi Channel's first original series, one of their most expensive at the time, and with the highest rate of puppets per minute. John Crichton is an astronaut scientist who has a theory about gravitational acceleration in outer space, and the time has come to test it. Utilizing a spacecraft designed specifically for the mission, he embarks on the kind of dangerous mission that changes history, charting a new course for science, technology, and the future. As he races across the outer limits of Earth's atmosphere, the experiment takes an unexpected turn. His ship Farscape 1 is overcome by a gravitational wave anomaly that opens a wormhole, catapulting him across space and time. He finds himself amidst an ongoing conflict between unknown alien species with incredible spacecraft weaponry and technology far beyond those of the Earth he left behind. He's also in space jail. A man out of time and space, he's become a target of the ruthless peacekeepers after accidentally killing their leader's brother. Pursued across the galaxy, Crichton is going to have to make friends with a diverse cadre of felonious aliens and their stolen sentient ship to survive long enough to maybe one day find a way back to Earth. Brian Henson took control of the Jim Henson Company after his father, Jim Henson, passed away in 1990. Jim had been negotiating a merger with Disney that fell apart for two main reasons. One, taxes related to Jim's death reduced the company's value relative to its debt, and two, one of the key assets Disney wanted to acquire, Jim Henson, was no longer available. 2 years later, in 1992, Brian Henson started working on a project he hoped would showcase everything that the Jim Henson Company was capable of producing. He wanted to flex everything they had developed for movies like Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the TV series Dinosaurs in one package. The initial seed of the idea was, as Henson put it, something like Star Wars, but on a weekly basis. In 1993, Henson recruited Rockne S. O'Bannon, who wrote the 1988 movie Alienation, episodes of Amazing Stories, the 1980s reboot of The Twilight Zone, and created Sequest DSV to develop a new story. Together, Henson and O'Bannon worked to create what they thought of as the anti-Star Trek. Despite their personal love for the Trek franchise, Star Trek The Next Generation was exactly the opposite of what they wanted to make. They wanted to get away from Star Trek's formal structure, its military hierarchy of leadership, the reserved, sometimes literally robotic nature of the characters' emotions. They wanted a science fiction show that was primal, with unconstrained emotions. Everybody loses their minds. And Henson wanted it to get weird, with as many creatures as possible. O'Bannon loved that and went for as much diversity of style and scale as he could. Big aliens, complex aliens, characters that were half human actors and half alien prosthetics.
Everybody's so creative.
O'Bannon introduced the idea of a man out of time and space, the hero lost in a foreign land, a science fiction standard connecting characters like John Carter of Mars, Buck Rogers, and Flash Gordon, a regular person from our Earth thrust into the unknown, an avatar for viewers on these incredible adventures. Henson and O'Bannon cycled through different names as the show evolved. From Far Horizon to Space Chase, they settled on Farscape, a name that evoked both the idea of Crichton being on the other side of the galaxy and the narrative need to escape from the relentless pursuit of the peacekeepers. In 1994, as Star Trek The Next Generation was airing its final season, Henson and O'Bannon took a crap ton of production art and O'Bannon's pilot episode script to the Fox network to pitch the idea. Still a young network, but on a rapid upward trajectory thanks to the success of The Simpsons, Fox was looking for new programming.
Tonight, civilization will come to an end. Hey, accidents happen. Whoops, a new comedy premieres tonight.
Fox read the script and liked it so much they asked for 3 more scripts and even more production art. Henson and O'Bannon returned to pitch again and again, each time working their way up the ladder of people who couldn't officially say yes to greenlighting the series. At the time, Fox was in the process of consolidating their East and West Coast primetime television development offices. The West Coast office was working with Henson and O'Bannon on Farscape. The East Coast office was working on a series called Space Above and Beyond. The final decision was made after Henson and O'Bannon pitched Farscape directly to Fox owner Rupert Murdoch himself. Spoiler alert, Murdoch passed on Farscape, greenlighting Space Above and Beyond 1 season 23 episodes instead. Cost was a huge factor in Fox passing on Farscape. While there would be some computer-generated effects, most of the visual effects work was going to be practical, physical effects. Building original alien worlds, spaceships, and all of the incredible characters that the Creature Shop was designing was expensive. Henson and O'Bannon attempted to sell Farscape directly to networks for syndication, working one market at a time when they got the opportunity to pitch to the Sci-Fi Channel. Launched in 1992, Sci-Fi was built on reruns from all over the television science fiction library. Cartoons like Transformers, Robotech, Bionic 6, and Galaxy High School, TV series like Sequest DSV, Alienation, Amazing Stories, Star Trek, My Secret Identity, Sliders, Doctor Who, and the Linda Hamilton Beauty and the Beast. That's 2 different shows, Doctor Who and the Linda Hamilton Beauty and the Beast. Can you imagine? Thanks to a management change, Sci-Fi was making the move to original programming. After hearing the pitch for the series, Sci-Fi ordered 13 episodes, encouraging Henson to make it as weird as possible because Sci-Fi did not want a kids show. While Henson and O'Bannon felt liberated by the creative freedom, it left them with a new problem. How do they actually make this show? And what is it actually going to cost? Everything about Farscape was driven by the budget. While the 13-episode purchase included a substantial penalty for Sci-Fi if they canceled before the order was complete, they still had to make the show as economical as possible. A single episode of Farscape was around $1 million, cheaper than an episode of Next Generation at the time, but not sustainable without a reliable network partner. And so production was moved to the much more budget-friendly shooting locations in Australia. Thankfully, once episodes were actively being produced, Sci-Fi placed an order for an additional 9 episodes to allow for a full season of 22. The move to Australia meant that, other than Ben Browder, who played John Crichton, nearly the entire cast and crew were from Australia and New Zealand, something that both Henson and O'Bannon credit for the full weirdness of the show, with O'Bannon saying, quote, "Australians are just incredibly wild individuals, and they embraced the insanity of the show."
So you got sucked down a wormhole and shot to the other side of the universe? Well, here's your helpful guide. Run, Scoot the Moose! If that doesn't work, introduce yourself.
My name's John. John.
Remember, aliens are very friendly and will greet you in many ways, like the tongue whip, the spit, the old-fashioned canoodle, the friendly welcome flip, or just plain laugh at you. So sit back and enjoy the food, and if you get the chance, run, man, run like the wind man! Farscape starts September 15th at 8.
Keep it weird on YTV.
Farscape kicked off in March of 1999, living up to its weird ideals, looking like nothing else on television, flying in the face of the retired Star Trek, the canceled Space Above and Beyond, the canceled Babylon 5, and even Stargate SG-1, which was heading into its 3rd season. But even with a full season order of 22 episodes and potential penalties, Farscape wasn't immune to the threat of cancellation from the very beginning. In the middle of season 1, the production frantically searched for a new home as they were kicked out by a much bigger budget production, Star Wars Episode II: Attack of the Clones. Thankfully, another studio was available in Australia, as the cost to move back to the US would have been prohibitive. Despite several scheduling changes by Sci-Fi, the team at Henson was able to get into a rhythm, the show established its foundation, and the fan base grew. Meanwhile, outside production, the Jim Henson Company was in a state of flux. In 2000, Jim Henson's 5 children, who were all adults, sold the company to EM.TV, a media and merchandising company in Germany, for $680 million. EM.TV immediately sold off pieces to recoup some of that cost. Children's Television Workshop, the company that had been responsible for Sesame Street since its debut in 1969, was able to purchase back the rights to all of the Sesame Street's characters, which they still own today. Sci-Fi ultimately picked up Farscape Season 2 before the end of Season 1. Production worked ahead, knowing that they had at least 22 more episodes of story to tell. But 2001's Season 3 wasn't a guarantee. As Sci-Fi began to finance more original programming, the budget for Farscape became a target. Henson credits the fans for their efforts early on to engage with Sci-Fi in creative ways to make their feelings known whenever the threat of cancellation became too real. When Sci-Fi thought they needed to expand their audience beyond the typical male viewer, the current female fans let their presence be known with a campaign known as Brascape, wherein they mailed bras to the Sci-Fi offices. Furthermore, the fans established SaveFarscape.com, a way to coordinate their lobbying efforts to keep the show on the air. Henson has stated that Season 3 would not have happened without the fans' activism online and in the real world. Heading into 2002, Sci-Fi agreed to 2 more seasons, Seasons 4 and 5, which gave production a chance to breathe and set up longer storylines. It meant deeper, more complex character work and more dramatic resolutions. But later that year, citing declining ratings and, again, the high cost of production, Sci-Fi canceled Farscape, having aired only half the episodes in Season 4. And it was once again up to the fans to save the show. The cancellation was unceremoniously announced by Henson and O'Bannon during an online chat with fans, after which fans got to work to find alternative ways to fund the show with money from outside Sci-Fi and the Jim Henson Company. At the time, the Jim Henson Company was still owned by EM.TV, meaning that Brian Henson was no longer the decision-maker at the top nor involved in negotiations in any way. The fate of Farscape was in the hands of executives at EM.TV and Sci-Fi Channel, clouding production with uncertainty and helplessness. The Season 4 finale ended with "To be continued," which no one liked because it seemed like a wish more than a promise. Fans acted quickly, attempting to create their own crowdfunding efforts and exploring ways to bring in backers who could make larger contributions. Meanwhile, EM.TV put the Jim Henson Company back up for sale. Disney, Viacom, AOL, Time Warner, even Saban were all interested, but no deals were made. EM.TV was close to selling 50% of the company to a group of investors led by media entrepreneur Dean Valentine, but he was unable to secure funding. When EM.TV's finances worsened in 2003, the Henson family was able to repurchase the remains of the Jim Henson Company for $84 million. But that didn't solve the financing problems for Farscape. Henson once again credits the fans for doing the work to get Farscape back into production. It was the sustained effort to spread the word about the show that resulted in a backer with the means and desire to help. Henson said he got a call from a person who said, "I would like to fund it." 2 days later, Henson went to meet them and Farscape was back in production. Kind of. In October of 2004, Sci-Fi aired The Peacekeeper Wars, a 2-episode miniseries to wrap up all the loose ends of Season 4 and bring the series to a proper close. Fans held their collective breath and crossed their fingers, hoping that not only would the story deliver closure, but also that enough new fans would discover it and production would continue. Despite all the efforts to keep the show alive, the ratings were the ratings. And for The Peacekeeper Wars, they were consistent with the ratings when the series was canceled. At the end of the day, TV is a business, and neither Sci-Fi nor the Jim Henson Company could justify the cost of the series without more viewers. Farscape was released on DVD, and in 2011, all 4 seasons were released on Blu-ray. Neither release includes the Peacekeeper Wars 2-episode miniseries. In 2019, all 4 seasons and the Peacekeeper Wars were released on Amazon Prime Video. It was also released on Blu-ray again, this time including the Peacekeeper Wars. As of this video, a 3rd Blu-ray set is scheduled for release this month, November of 2023, by Shout Studios. That said, you can stream it online at many of your favorite service providers. In 2000, Toy Vault began releasing a line of action figures in multiple scales. 2 series allowed for versions of the characters in different outfits, including from specific episodes like Scorpius and the Hawaiian shirt from the Crackers Don't Matter episode. In 2002, Red Lemon Studios released a Farscape video game for Windows. It's set during Season 1 and features the voices of the actors from the series. The reviews were not good, and no sequel was produced. That same year, Alderac Entertainment released a Farscape role-playing game built on the D20 system. Reviews were good. It was nominated for multiple awards: Best Graphic Design, Best Layout, and Best D20 Game of 2003, and no sequel was produced. 3 Farscape novels expanded the universe outside the television series: House of Cards, Dark Side of the Sun, and Ship of Ghosts. A 4th was in the works but was never published because the show was canceled. In 2002, Jim Lee's Wildstorm Productions published a 2-issue miniseries called War-Torn. 6 years later, in 2008, long after the show had been canceled, Boom Studios published stories that take place after the Peacekeeper Wars. 3 4-issue miniseries between 2008 and 2009 that led into an ongoing series that ran 24 issues. After Farscape ended, Ben Browder and Claudia Black worked together again, this time on Stargate SG-1, a series which began 2 years prior to Farscape on Showtime, then moved to Sci-Fi in 2002 during Farscape's final season. As fans of Farscape, the writers included a few nods to Browder and Black's time on the show. In 2007, it was reported that Farscape was finally returning as a series of 10 webisodes. Webisodes, a portmanteau of web and isodes. Brian Henson and the entire Farscape fandom hoped that the webisodes would perform well enough to bring back a regular series or perhaps a feature film. 2 years later, Henson said that they were still looking for webisode funding and that if the fans wanted to help out with that, anyone? Anyone got any money? They want to make some Farscapes? Nobody? How about bras? Can we do that again? In 2014, a new report suggested that a Farscape movie was in development. 4 years later, in 2018, Brian Henson acknowledged that fan interest has never relented and that he is just as excited about getting it done as he has.
This is Scorpius.
But it's complicated. The budget, the timing, the story. A movie might not be enough time to tell the story they want to tell. It might work better as a TV series again. As he put it, quote, "Sort of exactly like what we're doing in London right now with Dark Crystal. So there is the potential of doing something like that."
Yeah, there, Elizabeth Gibson.
Farscape was a highly innovative series whose influence can still be felt today. Writer, director, and current co-head of DC Studios, James Gunn, has admitted that the characters, the weirdness of Farscape, played a huge role in his approach to his Guardians of the Galaxy films. Citing it as one of his favorite science fiction shows of all time, he went so far as to include Ben Browder in the 2017 film Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. You can see him as the Sovereign Admiral in the battle scene at the beginning of the film, providing counsel to Elizabeth Debicki's Aisha.
Scorpius,
SaveFarscape.com is currently available for anyone who wants to get the band back together As long as there are fans of Farscape, there's a chance that it could return someday.
There's always a chance. A reboot. So this is just a remix of the original theme song. Farscape. Oh, it's intelligent, well-written sci-fi that uses a lot of Jim Henson puppets and whatnot, but that's very sexy. I think it's even on YouTube, they have marathons of it running.
His cunning is just so deep, and he's so entrenched in because he's faced the worst, indomitable things, physical pain and torture in his life. Pain, torture, discomfort means nothing to him.
So good to see you again. The wormhole technology I've waited so patiently for. I don't want power. I want revenge.
Well, I hit the ground running, and I had him. I'd go back and look, and almost just that first second you see him is almost enough to go, wow, boom. Put that down to something special in sci-fi land for historical references. You know, I was just meant to do this guy. I've absolutely no doubt about it. That I was the only guy to do it, because it took so long to find me as well. You know, it was round 3 of testing to find me. And once they found me, you know, that was it. But no one thought of me, and I wouldn't have thought that I would ever do anything like it. But I look at those first 4 eps as well and go, wow, you know, I've even surprised myself just how clear the characterization was.
I am Scorpius, but of course you are.
The easiest choice was, you know, a deeper voice. I have a pretty round sort of deep voice. So I just played with the high-pitched thing, and it gives him a creepiness.
We must know when to be strong and
when to show compassion.
Thank you. Thank you.
As a matter of honor, sometimes we must be willing to give of ourselves.
It's hard to connect with this thing that looks like that and speaks like that. I mean,
Hello, John.
Now you tell me everything you know about wormholes. Everything.
the growl and the deeper voice is the Scaran side. So, in a sense, it makes sense that the high-pitched voice has evolved because he's been resisting the Scaran side. He wants to go as far away as possible from this Scaran thing that he is. And he's ended up in there somewhere.
That Commandant bitch will return here any time. I must be able to report success, or she's going to scrap my wormhole project, and soon the Scarans will rule half this galaxy.
Oh, Grasshopper, you're so screwed.
We see him lose control with Crichton in season 3, but it's only in front of Crichton. Season 4, he loses control in front of others, and this is in and around the flowers, and we see him, lose that voice, and it's his Scaran side, and he's been defeated in a funny way. He's defeated himself, and he's even displayed it to people.
Didn't know about it. Stark didn't know about it. This must be a new addition by the Scarans.
He doesn't like to lose, does he?
The voice, as I say, it's like a meter, It's like at home we have we have a meter for fire danger. It goes from green to red, and so his voice is like a meter. When it's in the high pitched, he's in control and everything's going swimmingly, and it's the Scorpio that we sort of love. When it's down in there, fire is burning. It's a big brush fire and it's out of control. But the guy that's powerful is the guy that is up in there. He's speaking high and is eloquent and takes his time. The rhythms are different, the whole thing.
You think I'm bluffing?
Do you want to die?
I really can't remember when I first, did the growl, etc. But it just seems so obvious. He actually has numerous voices.
I promise you, the wormhole calculations you have in your mind.
It's on Tubi as well? Cool. Yeah.
Who's there?
Good sci-fi.
Who's there?
So I think the first time I actually used the growl voice was when he was on his own, actually. One of those moments of frustration. So the only people who see it is the audience, which is great. It's like, oh, here's the Scaran in him. Whoa, he is a beast.
You leave me the hell alone, or the next time we part, one of us will be dead.
They've got a number of channels on YouTube playing
the audience
it 24/7.
sees that. No one else did. They're ahead of the pack. Oh, you cunning bugger.
My earliest memory.
Oh, God.
Is pain.
The two elements that make him up, the Peacekeeper, the Scaran, he's in denial of both. He doesn't fall in either camp. He's had to forge an identity of his own. It's like in America, with the notion of plastic surgery and the rest of it, people create another sense of themselves. And he's in that sort of area.
What is that?
My boy Scorpius. He's half scared and got a hell of a heat problem.
Physically, he has changed his whole way that he looks. He's reptilian. I mean, each day he's, depending on the conditions, how hot he is, he's looking different. that's him. He's changing. He's like, not so much a chameleon, but depending on the physical, environmental conditions, he might be really sweaty, and you get that sheen effect that we had in season 4, which we didn't have at the top. It was like quite flat. He's a lizard. It's a living thing. His skin and everything, and it's skin that's been tortured. He's not meant to look like that. So I think that's a good thing. I mean, everyone changes, haircuts, etc. But he changes as well. It's not just like this flat, set piece of makeup. No, it's evolving all the time. Every day's different.
I have chosen the name Scorpius.
Interesting choice.
So he's forged his own identity out of resistance, out of education. He's singular. He's on his own. He doesn't share anything with people or creatures unless it's in a way of just to empower himself or to win a situation, or he doesn't share things unless it's sharing something with John Crichton to get the wormhole knowledge.
I have shared these memories for a reason.
Intimacy, no, wrong. Intimacy is him in a room on his own with coolant rods, trying to get cool. That's intimacy for him.
Sorry to wake you, sir, but I think we've finally done it.
He's self-sufficient in a way that no one actually understands in Farscape land or as an audience member. Well, obviously he identifies in Crichton with something in himself, because Crichton is a singular being in our world of Farscape.
Crichton.
He's the only sort of being like Scorpius. Scorpius is a singular entity. There is no reflection of Scorpius, as there is no reflection of John Crichton in our world. So yes, he identifies with John Crichton and the struggles of Crichton.
I am in control of me!
No more John.
Screw you!
The reverse is more likely.
Maybe that's a part of the attachment. There's more to just the want, the need of information and data. There is a real curiosity in the sense of, and within that, there's a regard of, this guy's struggle.
I've never felt this connected, John.
You're not going all mushy on me back there, are you?
The yin and yang thing, They are one of maybe the same, maybe. Maybe that's where we were going, maybe.
You put something in my head.
We have had a chip in Crichton's head. Crichton's got to live with it.
This is no time to be having fun, John.
Get lost!
You've got to focus.
Scorpius is forever saying, don't be this person. Don't be weak, John. Don't. It's like, I'm trying to mould him. And he is. Trying to mould him into the being that he wants him to be. You're this, you're that.
This is intolerable for both of us. End it, John. Free us from one another.
Don't give me that human wishy-washy crap.
It's not too late to change the outcome.
Oh, you know everything about me.
He's trying to mould him. But in and around that, he sees a sense of himself in John. And it's like, so it's reflective. It's like, well, I'm not like that. Nor should you be. You want to be as potent as me? You want to survive in this world? Get with the picture.
Braca? He'll never bother you again.
We had a chain and a dog collar. We put it on, and, I'm standing there with a chain and dog collar. Well, and Rowan Woods was directing that particular episode, and we had a discussion, and I filled Rowan in on, I'm not interested in looking good here, We're not interested in looking good. In fact, we want to make him look as weak as possible. And I found myself on all fours just by chance. And Rowan just said, that looks pretty good. Give that a go. And that's what we went with. And it's great because the submissive thing with Braca, all of that, totally in submission. People had a big problem with it. Fans particularly did not like to see him turned down that much. But I want them to know that, in the turning down, he's actually been turned up. And you get it when he's in the grave, getting covered, you know, and he says,
Say Skernak. It'll save you.
Braca, wait! Skernak!
These nice dark
What
lips.
did you say?
Skernak!
Do not let them bury me.
there's nothing wrong with him at all. And, you know, in that moment, you should get it. He's been playing, and they're burying him, and he's going to be. Is he going to be okay? Well, he was ultimately okay. This is the thing of, you know, Scorpius' hero. They don't want to see their villain hero in such a predicament. But that's how cunning he is. That's how far he's prepared to go. He's so confident. He's prepared to give it all away. Give it all away. To ultimately win. But fans have had a big issue with it. I know it was the right choice. And it's creepy. It's really creepy. I mean, it has all those sexual undertones, and it's creepy, and, you know, a lot's been cut out, I've got to tell you. Particularly looking at, there was a lot of Braca and Scorpius, Scorpio on his knees as, you know, as the puppy dog, basically being voyeurs to Grazer and Crichton. A lot of it's been cut out, because I was doing all this panting and mad shaking. You get a glimpse of it when I'm in the bunker and I lick her shoes. I mean, that was all me, you know, the licking of the shoes. Some people had a bit of an issue with that. Not fans, but some of my fellow actors. Why are you doing that? You know, I'm selling it. I'm selling that he's just so submissive to her. To her. The one person who he has no regard for. He's licking her feet. There's a lot cut out. I went further than we actually saw. So a lot of that is probably being sensitive to the audience. But we get a pretty good taste. We probably get enough. But they're the sort of days where some people probably walked away going, what's he doing now, you know? What's he doing now? He's out of control.
Drink.
I wanted to show him totally brain dead. He's gone.
Look at him,
He's
look off.
anyone's mercy, beck and call. A lot of fans have big issues with that, seeing him so suppressed, you know. But for me, it's like, that's how far he's prepared to go, to sell a lie.
Does Grazer know you're my spy?
No. But she'll figure it out when she discovers you're alive.
She must never find that out.
At the end of the day, he has no respect for anyone of a higher rank. No respect whatsoever. It's all about him and his agenda.
Why should we care what insignificant systems think?
We're uniting as much of the uncharted territories as possible to improve our bargaining position with the Scarans.
The Council intends to negotiate.
A truce is being explored.
A truce won't prevent an invasion.
As a show of weakness, it may even hasten one.
He can play the game, as a politician plays the game. But underneath all of that, he's really only looking after himself, as always. The only person he respects, if he has any respect at all, is John Crichton.
John Crichton.
Commander John Crichton. Generations will know that name. Because he hasn't got any rank. He's this exotic creature.
Very soon, the Scarans will destroy us.
One evil at a time.
Do you know why you're my second in command, Braca?
No, sir.
Because you don't ask questions.
Scorpius hasn't got friends in his world. And I don't even know if Braca would qualify as a friend.
You're dead.
Well, he's a pawn. He's a pawn that Scorpius certainly has empowered and has a sense of trust. I mean, they have a strong relationship. It seems as though he has a sense of his own ambition, but it is purely to serve the boss. And I think he's very loyal. For someone who's such a snake, he's loyal to the boss because he actually knows, you know, where his paycheck's coming from. You know, he knows that this guy is the team to be on. Team Scorpio is the team to be on.
Well done.
Dave's very cheeky, and he's irreverent, I think, and you get that, which is great. There's fun, there's a glint in his eyes.
Don't do this, Brecker. I made you.
No, I made you.
Which I think is a great balance to me, because I'm so still and, serious. So I think we have a really good balance, and physically, it's a very different thing to look at. Dave, he's almost the archetypal, like Nazi in some regards, the dark hair, and he's sharp, and, but Dave has an irreverence and a lightness about his work, and it's cheeky, which I think is really great. Because again, that's a thing that like characters in scenes, I don't think people really take Bracker that seriously. That's what makes him powerful.
You are officially authorized to take control of the situation as you see appropriate. Congratulations, sir.
Well, he's more the Iago than Scorpius is, If people think of Scorpius as Iago, no, he's not. He's more like Othello in a sense. He's the Iago, Bracker. He's the little cunning sort of ambitious wheeler dealer. But there's more going on than meets the eye. With Scorpius, you know what's going on. Scorpius isn't Othello, but he's more the Richard III or the Macbeth, whereas Bracker is certainly the Iago in Shakespearean terms.
Grasshopper, tell me your plan for saving Earth.
By a simple declaration of alliance. Even infuriated, Empress Staley would be forced to stay his attack, or by its inception, incur a war that he is still afraid of losing.
Season 4 was probably, for me, my most problematic year. By bringing me on board Moya, created a lot of problems for me as an actor. I found myself in situations where I knew that I shouldn't be privy to particular conversations or be in a room at a particular time, and I found it, I felt in my acting, and it's been confirmed since I watched the episodes, that my acting style and he got more naturalistic and more human. So we got away from him, his magic, I thought. Then there were some magic moments of, again, problems where we solved the problem on the floor.
I agree. I think that would be more dynamic.
You really think our relationship has progressed that far?
It's ejecting out. It's changing it up.
There's the guys in the big suits who are actually Scarons on board Moya, and Crichton gives me a weapon. And I'm behind him. And Benny on the day said, I wouldn't give Scorpius a weapon. And I just made this offhand comment, well, maybe it's got blanks in it.
Super bright red?
Ah, that's interesting.
Are you looking for someone? Thank you, John.
Even though it was a bit cutesy, again, that was a cutesy moment. And I wonder about those moments. Are they earned? It may have been earned in that moment. But we earned a nice moment out of a problem. As I've said before many times, the problem is the solution.
You need to put some red lights on the end here, too.
To victory over Scaran domination.
To you. I also had my best moment for a long time. And it, again, was a thing by chance, I think. It was in an edit, in a cut. And it's the very, very final image of Scorpius with Sokozu on his knee. Now, that day, we were doing erotic asphyxiation with that leather strap. I saw it in LA when I was in LA earlier this year, and I was watching it, and I was pretty apprehensive. Because I know it's the final image of him, the last time we see him. But the cut is so hard and so final. What it said to me, and I cheered, what it said to me was, I just killed her. The girl who rebuilt my coolant rod has been like a bit of a buddy. And again, the buddy thing, problematic. He doesn't need buddies. He's just topped her. That's him. Now, whether that was a deliberate thing, you'd like to think it was. They've gone, we need to harden him up. It's the end, harden him up. Leave the audience with the real Scorpius. Or it was by chance, just by the cut. I don't know. I'll have a conversation with Prowsey about it, because it was brilliant. I cheered and went, wow, thank the Lord, We leave him as we know him.
For resisting the enemy.
For not resisting your friend.
Fans have asked me, that final scene, Wayne, did you actually really kill Sikozu? And I go, maybe.
And we've got some music here. I'm thinking about it. I'm like, color law needs to be changed. We're not going to go full red. We're going to go very light red, I think.
I can't remember the date, but it would have been back around 1991 or 92, or somewhere way back there. The first idea was, it basically started from like a creative urge within the company. We had this creature shop in London, And we were doing mostly movies out of that group, and they were doing some really cool creature effects and stuff like that were for movies. The most ambitious we had gotten for television was Dinosaurs, the TV series, which was very ambitious, sitcom, and they were animatronic characters and stuff. But we wanted something that mixed everything that we could do in creatures in one very cool, more adult series. And that's kind of where we started. And from there, it sort of was like, well, what if you did something that was like Star Wars Bar? I think I remember that being sort of thrown around. Something that had just a little bit of everything. You know, every corner you turned around was some new and weird effect. That's where we started. We thought we really wanted to move into science fiction, which was kind of new for us. I'd say Dark Crystal and Labyrinth were definitely fantasy. So we wanted to do something that was cool science fiction that had a lot of creatures in it, that went a lot further than other science fiction.
Boy, was Spielberg ever wrong.
That's such a good
Close
line.
Encounters, my
Oh my
ass.
God.
Rockney O'Bannon, we talked to several people, and then we really liked Rockney. And with Rockney, we started talking about taking an Earthling and putting him into the series, because he had done a few science fiction creations, and his feeling was, and we all got it immediately, was if you're doing all this work to create a cool, very out there alien reality, what you want is you want a point of view, a star point of view, that sees it as alien and weird and way out there, and not one that's just perfectly comfortable there. Because it's kind of weird to just drop into drama where everybody's creatures and aliens and nobody's treating each other like it's weird. So that was the idea of creating John Crichton
Stephanie, how much for the drawing?
as an Earth astronaut and getting him into this other galaxy, or at the end of this galaxy. We're still not sure what it is. So that he could go into scenes and go,
what is the matter with
you? I mean, you would
people?
You're a Patreon member. You get
and that also gave some creative license to Ben to start doing that, where he kept doing modern science fiction references and monster movie references, and it started to inform his character too. So the whole show sort of kind of spun off of that.
And I know you're good for it.
How come I'm not afraid?
Fear accompanies the possibility of death. Calm shepherds its
But you like the way it's coming out? It's working. It's getting there. It's getting there.
I love hanging with you, man.
We initially wrote one script ourselves with Rockney.
So, okay.
And then Rockney brought in David Kemper, and we wrote another, I think it was 4 scripts, but it might have been another 5 scripts. So there was either 4 total or 6 total scripts.
I think you might be the
and we
first
did
one
that for
ever
Fox.
to
Fox
take advantage
paid
of that.
for that. And the idea was that we were going to go on Fox, and this is, again, years before we went on air. And Fox at that time decided to pick up a different show. There was a changeover of, the same old story that you hear 1,000 times. Executives changed, this executive is going away, they liked Farscape, this new executive is coming in who liked, I think it was Space and Beyond. I can't remember which series it was. So they eventually didn't do it. So now we had these scripts, and we were, at the time, we just kept designing. We just said to the creature shop, just keep designing. So we did so much design work over the years. We did. You can find models of Moya that looks completely different from what Moya looked like. Zan was Zen and was a man in blue. Scorpius was Crace's sidekick. He was an evil Crace's sidekick, and he was this insect-like pup, and he was animatronic. It wasn't what Scorpius is at all. All sorts of things were evolving during that time, and Rigel and Pilot were probably the most intensive design for the characters. So we now had this incredible package of art and these 6 scripts, and David went off to do stuff, Rodney went off to do stuff, and then we just kept sort of selling it, trying and selling it. We decided we were going to try and just syndicate it, just go straight to sell it directly to the TV channels and see if we could raise the money that way. And in starting that process, the Sci-Fi Channel had just made a decision to start commissioning original programming, and up until then they'd only bought science fiction movies that had already been out for a long time, and they put it on their channel. So we were one of the first series that they bought. They
try not to
saw
get
this
nervous,
was going
not
out to
to screw it up,
syndication and
because
basically
now
called us
I
and
know
said, "Whoa,
somebody's
rather than
wanting to
putting it
buy
out to
it, so I'm like,
syndication,
oh,
why don't
God,
you
no,
let
yeah.
us pay for it and
Over here.
and make it with us?" And that's basically the way the whole thing went. But the result is now it's 2004, and we've made 4 seasons. We've just made a mini series that encapsulates the story of season 5. But we've been working on it for it's probably 12 years now. A lot of us.
Give me one reason I shouldn't fire your ass and shut down the whole Farscape project.
Sir, the project could still bring great benefits to this organization.
To me, a really good idea always stays a really good idea. And one thing you have to be very careful of in this industry is, letting a broadcaster or a studio pay for your script, and then because they've paid a little bit of money, they then decide not to make it, and then they decide nobody can make it. And you have to be very careful of that. I'd say half of our productions have been things that were passed on, and then a few years later we actually got them set up. But Farscape was always a great idea, and it was very flexible. And I think we all knew right at the beginning that it was science fiction like you'd never seen it before. It was already a fresh enough take because we decided we wanted it to be real macho, and at the same time we wanted it to be over the top, which would allow it to be funny. When we create the personalities of characters, they tend to be so extreme that they'll feed comedy even when it's not comedic, even when it's Farscape is drama. There's there's a few episodes where they actually are deliberately funny, but not often. And usually where there's comedy, it's just because of the situations that these very extreme characters are forced together and create a funny moment, like funny moments are created in real life all the time, but not as deliberate comedy. And we knew that Farscape was more primal. It was more emotional. We were taking an opposite position from Star Trek. Star Trek took a sophisticated vision of the future. We are not the future in Farscape. We're just alien. And in Star Trek, everybody has control of their emotions. People are much more considered. People plan ahead. They're very fast. They're ahead of you. They speak with few words. Their lines are short. In Farscape, we said everybody's over-emotional. It's almost like they're all without culture because they've all been mixed up and they're going from planet to planet, and everybody's actually quite insecure and their emotions are dialed right up, and everything is very unpredictable. And even within the stories of Farscape, once the story looks like it's predictably going that way, we would force it to go that way, so that it was always, very surprising. And we wanted a visual look too that was cool in science fiction, but also kind of tribal and primal. So you'll see a lot of tattooing, and you'll see leather and beads and stuff like that, and earrings, and you'll see a lot of sort of cool tribal elements that are going into also these very cool modern futuristic spaceships and stuff like that. So we knew we had a good formula, and we just kept sticking with it.
Dargo, there are people watching.
Why don't you just get dressed and give him a good show, sweetheart?
I am dressed.
I remember that.
These days it's hard to make a big series. We knew it was going to be big and expensive. So even at the beginning, when we were initially developing with Fox in America, and at that point it was Fox and BBC in Britain, and at that point we were going to shoot in Britain, and BBC were going to be paying more money for it because it would be British as well as American, and we would indeed be shooting in Britain. Then what happened was, when we were moving from Fox, we knew that sci-fi Fox were going to spend a lot more money than cable does. So when we knew we were moving to syndication or the Sci-Fi Channel, we needed a different creative way to finance this. We thought, boy, this is such a big show that we need to not only get the cable channels in America, Sci-Fi, to pay more than anybody's ever paid on cable for a TV series. Not only do we need that, we need 2 other countries to also say it's their show and pay for it like it was their show. So we were trying to do a British Australian co-production, the first sale to Sci-Fi, and as purely as a way to raise enough money that each of those broadcasting groups would be paying more. And as we started to investigate, that was as we were starting to investigate shooting in Australia, and Australia was just starting to do some pretty cool stuff, and they were actually shooting Matrix when we were down there scouting and setting up Farscape, and you started to see there was a real coming of age of the Australian industry at that point. They were very excited about science fiction. It was much bigger than, it's still by far the biggest series, TV series ever shot in Australia, as Farscape is. What they lacked in experience, they more than made up for in enthusiasm. Because they were so enthusiastic and they didn't know how to do this stuff. They didn't know what's the way you do a fight scene using gymnastics, what's the way to shoot with somebody in prosthetic makeup and how to schedule it, what's the way to shoot in front of green screens and process shooting and spaceships and stuff like that. They had to make up a new way for every one of those, scenarios. So because they didn't have the experience, the result was a show that has every bit as much production polish. It is as beautifully finished as any science fiction television ever made. And yet the choices in how to do things were unique and new. And so it's why it became science fiction like you've never seen it before, the most innovative series. I mean, we have walls and walls of awards that we've won for how innovative the series is. And a lot of the reason for that is because these Australian craftspeople were making up ways of solving problems rather than solving them the way they'd been done before, because they didn't actually know the way they'd been done before.
They didn't know how to do it.
Which is terrific.
Listen to me. And listen very, very carefully.
What the hell did you just say?
Frankly, it's just expensive to make the kind of things that we make. And they're not successful, really, unless they're successful in more than one country. It's hard for the American broadcasters sometimes, because it's very hard for them when you say, we need these elements because Australia really likes this part of the show and would like to see more of it, or England really likes this part of the show and would like to see more of it. It's very hard for an American broadcaster because they're used to nobody else, no other broadcasters have any input into how a show is made other than the American broadcaster. So it's tough for the broadcasters to have to work that way. But having said that, Sci-Fi were terrific, and they were pretty specific on what they wanted more of, and as long as everybody was talking that way, it made for a very exciting, very complex series. The show doesn't simplify because there were lots of elements that Australia loved and wanted to see more of, and there was elements that England loved and wanted to see more of, and there was elements that America loved and wanted to see more of. So in a lot of ways, producing for the international market is in a lot of ways creatively liberating, because you are trying to please a lot of different broadcasters. And although that's tough, it actually creates freedom. It means that every broadcaster will blame you every time something's not successful in an episode. They'll say it's because you did something that we didn't ask you to do. But having said that, I love working with the international market. Particularly England and America has been a combination that we've done a lot of. And bringing in Australia is kind of fun because Australia, they're like mavericks. They're out there wild people who are also very educated, very smart. They're just an interesting, exciting culture. So it was a real nice influence to bring that in to the sort of American-Australian, the American-English mix. But it's liberating and logistically tough. Creatively liberating, logistically tough.
Hi. My name's John. John.
Ben was cast here in America. You know what? It was a normal, like, network-like casting process that only happens in California. It doesn't happen anywhere else in the world, where you video test a lot of actors, and you have to have 5-year deals with them before they even do a video test. So it's tough. It's very tough. You bring people in, and they've got to sign a contract that says, if you say you want me to, I'll move to Australia for 5 years. That's pretty hard. We couldn't bring American cast over. It was always only going to be John Crichton and possibly a few smaller roles, like it turned out to be John's dad was also American, but he wasn't on the show all the time. There was a lot of great actors that were coming in, and we were casting at the same time as other series, or no, we were probably casting a little bit past when we weren't quite casting at the same time as what they call the pilot frenzy casting season that happens every year in America. Sci-Fi Channel was on a slightly different schedule, so we were a little protected from that. But we saw a lot of American actors, and Ben just shined to us. It was Rod Perth, who was at Sci-Fi, who was he had come from a network background, so he was making sure we didn't do it in a shortcut way that many of the cable channels work in. He wanted the full, thorough, we're looking at everyone, I want a video test, I want the 5-year contract. So it was, it was a big deal casting Ben. And what Ben had was, there was a friendliness to him, there was a charm to him, and there was something else going on all the time behind his eyes. And not many people appear to be that straightforward, and at the same time that you're thinking, what a straightforward guy, you're thinking, and there's something else going on in his head. And it was just it was really interesting, because even when he isn't playing subtext, he's playing subtext, and even when he says a line straight on, and he's right on plot and right on emotions, there's still always a twinkle in his eye. There's a something that Ben Browder always does that says, I'm actually thinking something else as well while I'm asking you this question. And you might think I'm asking you this question for this reason, but I got another reason too. And I might be saying to you that I'm not attracted to you at all, but I'm thinking I really am very attracted to you. So it worked everywhere. It worked romantically, it worked dramatically, and we knew we wanted at that time. There was a little bit of Indiana Jones as kind of a direction that character should go in. Somebody who is taking charge and making the plan and committing to it, and at the same time saying to everybody, I'm making it up as I go. I don't know what I'm doing, but you're all too crazy, so I say we do this, so we're doing it. And then it goes wrong, and it keeps going wrong. And, I think Ben will laugh. He'll tell you, I never gave him a plan that would work. I think we gave him 2 plans that would work in 88 episodes.
No, I will not come with you.
You've been irreversibly contaminated, remember?
It means death.
Is my duty, my breeding. Since birth, it's what I am.
You can be more.
Initially, the show was meant to be British-Australian. And then in the end, it was an Australian show. We shot in Australia, and it was an Australian show. So the cast was, Ben was the only American, and everybody else was Australian. But initially, it was meant to be British-Australian, which meant 2 roles had to come from Britain, I think.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that was.
As we started, we hadn't yet even started up the British casting process, but we knew that in Australia there was only certain roles. We were pretty sure that Aaron was going to come out of Britain. And then what happened was Australia started saying, well, let us show you some Australians playing Aaron anyway, even though we know you'll probably go with British. Because at the time, we could have taken an English Aaron but used a British Zahn. We could have mixed it up in different ways. So what was odd was they were bringing in these girls to test, and And we had given them an archetype that was like coldly beautiful, blonde, blue-eyed, Aryan. This was sort of the direction we were sort of drawing the Nazi parallel with the Peacekeepers, and we had in our minds, athletic gymnastics, a fight, a good fighter actress, who would be doing flips and stuff possibly. We had all these sort of ideas. So anyway, they got Claudia to come in and read opposite some actresses, because Claudia was a friend of the casting director. And so they brought in Claudia to read opposite. Now, Claudia was a well-known actress in Australia at that point. She was quite well-known. And she was shooting Pitch Black and stuff like that. So we were watching these auditions on videotape, and we were all going, well, can we see more of the actress that's actually reading to the ones who are auditioning? Because even though she's just standing there holding the script, reading lines, she was pretty great. And then she was doing Aaron opposite some people who were auditioning for other roles. And she did one audition, and we thought, wow, this is really something. And then we decided, at about the same time, we found out we're not going to be casting in Britain. So Ben had just been cast, and we said to Ben, come on down to Australia, have a look, because he had to move there and stuff. So we were saying, come on down, as soon as he was cast, come on down, look at Sydney. And we said, maybe have a look at some of the casting choices. So he went into a room with Claudia, and the two of them started working together, and it was so clearly going to work brilliantly that's the way Claudia ended up cast as Erin, and everybody felt, wow, she's going to be just a star in this role. And she was kind of an opposite type. I mean, we had blonde, Aryan, blue-eyed,
What is your rank and regiment?
and what Claudia is sort of strong, and Claudia kills you with her dialogue. She doesn't need to lift a hand.
No, good writing always helps, right? It's any show.
What's up, Dargo?
I'll tell you what's up. I'm gonna kill you.
I don't think so.
What is Farscape was more answerable by the show than by anybody involved in the creating team. And it started taking on its own artificial intelligence almost. That's really exciting. And when that artificial intelligence is correct, where things that were written in the script were not done on set. Instead, somebody was uncomfortable with this line, so made it this line, and somebody was uncomfortable with that bit of blocking, so made it that. Different people. And the props guy said, I know the script said this prop, but I thought maybe this prop. And these decisions are right and better. Then that's when the show starts to know itself and create itself more than the creators are creating, or as, not maybe more, but as much as the creating team are creating the show. When that happens, it's a really exciting thing. And that clearly started happening, again, about 2/3 of the way through season 1. And that's real exciting. When I was literally waiting with excitement for the first cut of a script, because I'd seen the script and I know the cut's going to be something different and better, and I might have given a few thoughts but not many, and it just would keep growing and growing. And then when you'd see the finished cut, then you'd wait for the visual effects and for the finished music, and you'd know it would grow again in a way that you didn't expect. It's really exciting. It's like a child growing up or something. Farscape was going to walk.
All projects are babies. I get it. I totally understand what he's saying.
Hell, we're screwed.
Should
I disrobe so it's memorable?
The truth is, sometimes it got out of hand on Farscape. Sometimes everybody felt like there was too much pressure to create. Definitely. There's been times when I've been on set and anybody will say, everybody starts doing everything. And that can be a problem, when everybody is suggesting changing this line. The prop guy, the lighting director, the scenic artist, everybody. And everybody is suggesting, why don't we do the scene this way? And then people start thinking, it's my responsibility. It's or actors start thinking, I have to manage all of my props and all of my costumes because that's the kind of show this is. We're all creatively responsible for everything. It started to at times it would become nuts. You can imagine. At times it's like chaos. You walk on set, it's chaos. You think, how are we ever going to shoot? Nobody's in agreement here. Everybody's got final say about everything. Having said that, it would often become fights. There were people would argue. It was like Farscape behind the cameras was often similar to Farscape in front of the cameras.
Oh, salmonella, what the hell is that?
That's Goldar, a delicacy, even for pagans.
Yeah, how long was it under your butt getting delicate?
Everybody loves each other. Everybody gets along terrific. But like any family, they're all at each other often. And everybody's trying to reinvent everybody else. Constantly. It's a big old circle of reinventing.
How you doing?
I have to pee. I thought I would live much longer.
I never thought I'd live this long.
The truth is, every time the show continued, I was jubilant and never confident. When we went from season 1 and got the order for season 2, Sci-Fi Channel was spending a lot of money for a cable channel. And the fact that they loved it so much that they were quite willing to pay far more than they could ever make from the show. And they always did. And I know people were kind of hard on Sci-Fi. Sci-Fi always paid more than they could ever make, selling ads during the airing of Farscape. Their feeling was that it was a real good show. They were proud of it. It kind of represented sci-fi. And even though they would never be able to recoup what they were spending on Farscape while it was airing, it would help to identify the channel and help to just grow the channel overall. So every year, it was never a guarantee. It was such a big show for a cable channel that I was always so impressed that they were able to come back and order another season.
You and your timing.
The fact that we stopped after season 4 was a surprise and happened at a particularly tough time because after season 3, what we tried to do was do season 4 and 5 as one package. And that was a slightly more complicated way of working. It meant committing to people for 2 seasons, 2 years of work, committing to camera companies and lighting companies and all that stuff. And the idea was it would make the episodes a little less expensive of the now it will be 44 episodes that we were making rather than 22. And Sci-Fi, like any channel, would say, okay, let's do this because this is smart, but if we're concerned about how expensive, we need to be able to stop making them halfway through. Of course, it's enormously complicated. It's like a train moving at full speed and then putting the brakes on. You always said, I guess we can do it if we have to, but it's a really hard thing to do. And it all happened at a bad time. It was while we were shooting the last episode, Sci-Fi was basically saying, we can't make season 5. So now we were trying to trigger some emergency plan that meant people who thought they were working for 2 years were now finding out, no, it's only going to be 1 year. And it was a tough process. I could understand why Sci-Fi did it though, because they had a lot of what they were realizing was with such a big show, it's got to be somewhere else first. That's what they had found out. They had Stargate on, and Stargate, I don't think is as good a show. They're real nice people, I'm sure. And they're making a good show. I just don't think it's as good as Farscape. But it showed you what would happen if you take a show that starts on a bigger channel and then move it to the small channel, that your ratings are better. So we had that working against us, that Stargate was outperforming Farscape on the Sci-Fi Channel. So we had that working against us. So I could understand how it happened. There was a lot of people changing over. At the Henson company, we had sold the company The family had sold the company to EMTV. They were unsure of the investment they were putting in, but they were contractually bound. So it was one of those where Sci-Fi would say, we can't afford it. Maybe we'll do a half season. They wanted to do a half season. Well, now the international investors, EMTV, were going, oh, we don't have to do a whole season? Well, we're not sure we're not contractually obligated to do a half season. It was one of these where it was a house of cards, a financing house of cards that I was trying to hold together that kept tripping, kept falling over here, and it was falling over here. And I'd go on set, and the cast and the creative they'd be saying, are we on or are we off? And I'd say, looks like we're really on for season 5. So I'm sorry I scared everybody. I think we're on. And then 2 days later, it'd be, I think we're off. I can't believe it, but I think we're off. And then 2 days later, I think we're on. And 2 days later, I think all those people were so emotionally beat up by the end. I felt awful. And it was me trying to put together this financing house of cards that did turn out to be a collapsing house of cards. And it was tough because it was happening while people were shooting the last episode of season 4. And actors were finishing and saying, well, am I going home forever or am I going home for a month's vacation? And leaving and thinking they were going home for a month's vacation and then finding out they were going home forever. So it was really tough, and at the last moment we had a wrap party that became a wrap party for the series instead of a wrap party for the season. And we had an episode that finished with a cliffhanger, and should we try to rework it so there's not a cliffhanger? No, we decided in the end. We decided, you know what, this is the way Farscape ended. It ended with a weird to be continued, so we're going to end the last episode with to be continued. The broadcasters were not very happy about that. Broadcasters thought we put that to be continued as sort of a way of poking at them, maybe, which it wasn't. It was just that was real. The story wasn't done.
We have some unfinished business.
Yes, we have.
The Save Farscape guys basically made it possible for us to make the miniseries, the Peacekeeper Wars, because the fact that they didn't give up is the only reason why there's still more Farscape right now. They lobbied everybody. They did email campaigns to the Sci-Fi Channel trying to get them to pick it up. But the Sci-Fi Channel people feel like they were inundated with the fans of Farscape, angry at them, and then friendly, please bring it back, then angry, then please bring it back. But I'll tell you, it was several other channels out there as well. There were lots of channels that got inundated with please buy Farscape from Sci-Fi and please put it on your channel. They did an enormous amount of work. They bought ads in magazines saying bring Farscape back. They bought space in TV Guide. And when the last episodes were going on, they were buying publicity to help support, hoping that if there were some real good ratings just at the end, that maybe Sci-Fi would change their mind. Of course, it's not quite that simple. But what did happen was they put the word out in so many different directions and gave it so much momentum that I was introduced to a consortium of financiers that I never would have met without them. Never would have found them. And they never would have found me, probably, if it weren't for the fact that they basically... What ended up happening was the financiers of the miniseries are not normally television financiers, and they saw this underground sort of thing going on with Farscape, bring it back, and then they became acquainted with the series, and then they were saying, we'd quite like to talk to you about helping to continue this thing. And that was just amazing, and it took a little while to pull that whole deal together. But if it hadn't been for the Save Farscape movement, Farscape we would have stopped at the end of season 4. And we would have stopped in a not very nice place, because the fact that there were so many stories unfinished, this was one problem that we had when doing the miniseries. We knew we had to start where the series finished, which is a little tough for a broadcaster to say you're going to air a big event miniseries that starts not at the beginning of a story, but it starts partway through. So we were trying to do a little bit of both. Peacekeeper Wars is partly its own self-contained story and partly the continuation of and conclusion of the big series story. But we wanted to go make movies, for instance, and we even had a couple of approaches after season 4 to do a theatrical movie, and we didn't know quite how to do it because we had left the series too up in the air. You know, we knew that we needed to get some of these stories settled so that, you know, at the end of, so that Farscape was continuing, but not with cliffhanger, unfinished questions all over the place. So now, by having done Peacekeeper Wars, now Farscape can spin off. There can be spin-off series. There can be movies now, which none of that was really an option before.
Thank you.
What I'm most proud of with Farscape is how innovative it is. It really turns everything on its head. I think we, as a company, the Jim Henson Company, we've always been proud of the fact that we don't try to emulate other shows. We try to be innovative every time we make anything. But I'd say since Dark Crystal, Farscape is the most innovative thing we've ever done. Dark Crystal was insane, I think, probably. My father was insane when he first decided he was going to make Dark Crystal,
was one of my
and
favorite
nobody,
movies as a child.
you know, believed that movie could really ever happen.
Adult too.
But Farscape, similar. We took science fiction and turned it on its ears. We took the genre, which it never really, science fiction isn't a genre, but everybody liked to believe it was a genre, so they like to assign all these rules to the genre, and when it isn't even a genre and it shouldn't have any rules. But we broke all those rules, you know. And you know, what's exciting to me is that we did something so cool and different, and yet it's not art housey. It's still, you know, often if you do something really cool and new, it's too confusing and it's too weird. And yet, what Farscape does is it's incredibly commercial. At the same time, it's very, very innovative. Some of the storylines are very commercial storylines, you know, with Crichton being very predictable and the all-American hero in there. But then, you know, he stumbles in interesting ways and stuff like that. But the show can be very innovative and yet very watchable and very embraceable at the same time. I'm proud of how creative it is, as much as anything. I feel like all the characters are parts of my family as well now. I feel related to everybody in a weird way. And that's just weird, actually. You don't want to even get inside the psychology of that, but you really do. You come out of it feeling like they're your brothers and sisters and they're your family. And you're not sure whether you're thinking the characters or the actors. You know, so it all gets confusing. It's a very strange industry. No wonder we're all sick.
Very candid. Very candid.
It might be 17 years since Farscape last made its mark on the world of sci-fi television, but there really has been nothing like it since, and I am going to talk about one particularly enthralling element of this explosive and super imaginative space opera, and that is the show's central villain, Scorpius. Scorpius is a strange-looking fella, played by Australian actor Wayne Pygram. Also famed for his fleeting role as Moff Tarkin at the end of Revenge of the Sith, this guest villain at the end of the first series of Farscape made such an impression that he quickly became a regular, who was swiftly entrenched in the entire mythology of the show. He is absolutely one of the coolest characters in a sci-fi TV series, and certainly one of the best villains. Here's why. I'm about to go real deep into the story of Scorpius and his impact in the world of Farscape. If you're looking to binge on this series for the first time, and you should, you might want to click away now. So what makes me such an expert on Farscape? This.
Showing off this collection.
Marvellous. Anyway, viewers learned swiftly early on that the Peacekeeper chain of command went a lot higher than that of vengeful Krace, who would quickly defect toward a kind of supportive anti-hero role. Above him in the Peacekeeper ranks was Scorpius, a half Sebacean, half Scaran hybrid with a desire for results that outworked everyone else. Scorpius was driven, he was ruthless, he was diplomatic, and he was working on something a little bit secret. Cue his obsession with central protagonist and all-round good man John Crichton. You see, during his exploits across the uncharted territories, a gift was bestowed upon the unwitting Crichton. He didn't ask for it, but he received it all the same, and that gift was the secret to wormhole travel. Once Scorpius, the peacekeeper commander with a troubled past, caught wind of it, he made it his undying quest to unearth the wormhole technology from John Crichton's brain and use it as a weaponized tactical advantage for the peacekeeper agenda, an agenda aligned with Scorpius's own desire to wipe out the entire Scarran race. Naturally, John Crichton is the good guy, and this isn't Game of Thrones, and so he escaped from Scorpius's oily clutches, and that was that. Or so he thought. You see, it wasn't enough for Scorpius just to hunt him down and hack his brain open. He had to take more intrusive and slightly perverse routes towards extracting information. Yeah, he is a bit weird like that. Whilst John Crichton was in his captivity first time around, Scorpius implanted John with a neural clone of himself, a digital mini-Scorpius, hiding inside Crichton's mind in a slow bid to dig out the wormhole information and report back to HQ. One of my favourite Scorpius geek-out moments, and one of the many little subtle touches that made Farscape that little bit smarter than its peers, was during the episode Liars, Guns and Money Part 1, where Crichton, mentally incapacitated by the neural clone, and Scorpius, on course to zonking out after being spiked with a defective coolant rod which he needs to survive, have a rather messy standoff. This results in Crichton clambering away in a desperate battle against his own muscles, whilst blurting out the American national anthem. You remember that scene? Well then you may also have picked up on the detail that during Scorpius' shocking return at the closing scene of Season 2 finale, Die Me Dick to Me, Scorpius is ever so subtly humming the very same anthem. To himself. And there's only one place he could have heard it. Is Scorpius starting to like Crichton's style? I love that show. Having been driven to all forms of insanity by this Scorpius neural footprint, John Crichton eventually won the battle for his own mind, putting the Scorpion in his brain under duress, changing his name to Harvey, and utilising him as a kind of comedy sidekick, whose advice he would call upon when needed. Scorpius's plan had failed, and great acting and clever writing swiftly enabled Harvey to be a new and wholly different character unto himself. Farscape was really good at doing stuff like that. Anyway, back to the genuine article. As the show progressed, that simple observance of Scorpius being a mere villain became ever more jaded. The regular insertions of coolant rods into his head showed a sign of vulnerability, a literal hot versus cold thing going on right in his head. His ability to use tact when required showed amiability, and the fact that he would continue his cause no matter what level of unpleasantries he endured showed a level of patience and tenacity more attributed to, well, a good guy. Okay guys, you got me. This video is complete false advertising. You see, Scorpius isn't really a villain. Antagonistic, yes. But villainous? No. Well, not really. It's complicated. You see, it was in Series 3 that viewers really got into the bone, brain and guts of this character, including an insight into his tormented upbringing, the horrific crime that led to his birth, and the monstrous Scarran mother figure who raised him as a soldier. It's no wonder he hated these people, but if nothing else, it bestowed upon him a fortitude that would act revenge on those who did him wrong, and allowed him to rise in the military ranks with a swiftness unattainable in lesser mortals. Turns out Scorpius didn't want to just destroy the Scarrans, he wanted to destroy the Scarrans, thus saving the galaxy. And this leads to the most dangerous and misguided character trait of them all: obsession. The more Scorpius learns about wormhole technology, the more he begins to bask in its glory, dedicating an entire command carrier to its research. He begins to view Crichton less as an opponent and more of an ally, offering him hospitality and freedom. His threats subside to negotiation. When Crichton is supposedly complicit, Scorpius shows a true level of endearment and wonderment when exposed to the science of wormholes. One might call it happy. We gather the sense that if it wasn't for his brutal militant default setting, he might have turned out to be a good person. For my money, the absolute best arc of Scorpius' character is found in the penultimate episode of Series 3, where John Crichton literally blows up all of his wormhole research and puts him right back to square one. Cue Scorpius' insatiable thirst for revenge. Nope. No, he does no such thing. Instead, he strolls idly through his exploding ship in a philosophical sulk, before finally confronting the man who openly thwarted his plans.
Yeah, we're
Having
doing
seen
some
Scorpius'
highlights on
animalistic
top.
side on a number of
Just,
occasions, it was remarkable to
punch
see
it up.
him give John
Really want it.
Crichton nothing more than a mild verbal scolding for supposedly bringing about the destruction of the galaxy, before setting his opponent free to escape and in a final concession of defeat, saying goodbye. Consider this a kind of end-of-game boss fight between John Crichton and Scorpius, except there's no fighting, only talking and a profound sense of understanding and borderline respect between protagonist and antagonist. It remains one of the coolest scenes in science fiction of all time ever. Well, I think it does. As Farscape soldiered on towards the show's unwitting demise, Scorpius was no longer the central threat. There were bigger things happening now. Scorpius was banished from the Peacekeepers and he became a perturbed, slightly sarcastic ally. And that thing with the leash, well, I don't know. Kind of rather not think about that. Anyway, all dimensions of this character were now on display. Scorpius was and always had been a soldier in a war, as desperate and frightened as any other character, and striving towards that sacrosanct goal of peace. Notwithstanding everything achieved in the previous 4 seasons of Farscape, everything you need to know about Scorpius' personality is summarised in the closing act of Farscape Peacekeeper Wars. His cold lack of concern over John Crichton's supposed death, and his giddy look of excitement when the feuding factions of Scarran and Peacekeeper finally broke a peace. Scorpius really is a game of two halves. A smart, complex, formidable and undeniably lovable character who remoulded what it was to be a science fiction antagonist. He is just one of the many excellent characters etched in the Sci-Fi Hall of Fame who, well, put it this way, if they made more Farscape, I'd be a happy man. And I'll leave it at that.
Nice little tribute. I found this interview from a French channel.
Excuse me, Captain. Duty calls.
Initially, it was 4 episodes. And the nature of this show is, you know, they do start people and it's like, well, if something works, give him another 4, see what happens. But it certainly started as 4 episodes, as I think, to just up the ante for the end of Series 1. Bring in, you know, an even nastier villain, per se, to you know, literally get under the skin of our hero.
So we originally cast for only 4 episodes. I just loved him so much.
That man. He is an imposter. Seize him.
My screen test, I only had 2 pages, and even that I had a taste of he's potentially special. And then once I saw some of the designs, and then when I got a draft of the actual first episode, it was confirmation of, yes, this is special. This is something to actually invest in, and, you know, I did 110% work to make sure, well, I did that on the audition to begin with, but I certainly had an attitude of, I'm going to make this a pie that's that good that, you know, we can't go on without him, whatever that means, and it's sort of turned out that way for me.
Oh, actors.
My name is Lorak, Peacekeeper Special Ops.
Unfortunately wrong, on all counts. I am Scorpius.
But of course you are.
It's an interesting balance, and I think bringing Scorpius in was a balance thing. We needed someone who could threaten our hero just a little bit more. I suppose initially I was very assured of of the original decisions I'd made and the choices I'd made, because I hadn't read a script prior to a screen test. I had 2 pages, so there wasn't much to go on. So what my instincts went for the screen test was certainly confirmed when I got to see a script. It was actually even better. The Aurora Chair, torture, invading people's subconscious, very powerful things. So it was you know, a confirmation of I'm in good hands, and I felt even more secure, particularly as I started to see my costume and makeup being built and go, oh wow, you know, it's going to be physically stunning. I just have to fill it out. Don't get seduced by it, but fill it out and have fun within it. And I wanted to break the standard conventions of what these guys are.
Excuse me, sir. Captain Trace has arrived.
Where is he? Where's Crichton?
This way, Captain.
I have orders to recapture the Leviathan and its passengers.
Captain, Crichton has vital information. Until I get it, you may not have...
I order you to release him to me.
Your adherence to orders is selective. You have repeatedly failed to cease the pursuit and return to First Command.
I have received no such orders.
Your dereliction of duty is not my prime concern. Give me your full cooperation, and you can have Crichton when I have finished with him.
Give me Crichton now, and I'll get you all the information he possesses.
Torture alone would be ineffective. Only the Aurora Chair can extract the information we need.
But the chair might well kill him before you find it.
Therein lies the stalemate I must break. You know this human better than anyone. What would persuade him to stop resisting the chair?
He's a very interesting character. I mean, he's so intelligent, he's so erudite, he's so smooth, but really he's someone who would have been very rough around the edges and still is. He has all these physical problems, but he's someone who's evolved, and he's evolved on his own. No one's helped him. Now he can get people to help because through intimidation or through his power. He's risen through the ranks because of his intelligence and his ability to do things that others wouldn't have.
So, nothing of what we saw was true?
No.
Were you born on a farming commune?
Yes.
Were you conscripted from it by the peacekeepers?
Yes, but...
How does Crichton know this?
Well, he must have stolen it from a database.
While he was in Security 3 containment.
Look, I don't know how he did it, but what you saw on there is not true.
Of course it's not. But there's only one way to be sure it is a lie.
How?
For you to go in the chair.
He's one step ahead of everyone. He's a highly evolved being who's been unfortunately born with physical difficulties. He's Stephen Hawkins, but he's got out of the wheelchair. He's found a way to get out of that wheelchair.
What are you doing here?
Admiring your quarters, Captain.
Quite opulent, even by captain standards. I've never understood the need of some warriors to memorialize their conquests. Does displaying this decaying flesh remind you of past instances when you were powerful?
Your branch of the service gives you special privileges, Scorpius, which does not include disrespect of rank. I want you off my ship.
Of course you do. Candidly, Captain, you have continually failed in all your duties. Your vector for success has grown quite small. Stray outside it, and I fear this ship will soon be in need of someone else to command her.
He hasn't got stripes, or he's not like Crace. He's someone who's very, very special services, underground, covert, and he's probably been out there on his own, hasn't been back to like main control, or even very rarely would have contact with them. But obviously they've given him a free rein. He's someone of who's of consequence. He's not to be messed with, and they know that. He doesn't follow party line, but he to a degree satisfies, a job criteria, shall we say.
You are unfit for duty by any measure. I personally intend to see you stripped of rank and office.
So you can take command of my carrier?
I already have.
Get off my
force me to display my physical superiority to your kind as well.
There's that voice.
But he's on his own mission now. Crichton is a personal mission. And it's not about vendetta. It's about knowledge.
Sensors indicate an explosive device aboard the transport has just been armed. What shall we do?
Admire Crichton his strategy. If he ignites the oil surface of that moon, we will have to abandon our research and evacuate the base.
Should we shoot him down, sir?
I cannot risk killing the knowledge that he possesses, and he knows that.
I see that it's the union between Crichton and Scorpius. The only way that either of them are going to solve that problem is actually having some form of union. We haven't quite seen it yet or got the full payoff. But it tells me that he might have to become even a bigger renegade to get what he wants. Because his personal mission is certainly bigger than the mission that's been given to him from his superiors. It makes him far more dangerous.
You're ready to have some fun. We certainly are.
Time to boogie. Sorry, good night. Boogie woogie. Just that little extra blue on the eyes has made it pop so much. Oh, I like it. I like it. Great touch blue, that's right. We ended up on 422. So suddenly there's some like mist or smoke that's coming from, or steam that's coming from it. I like the way that works. the hands. Doing really good highlights. Just subtly. But the glow. And the bass drum. A little bit more.
We certainly are.
I'm pretty pleased with how this one came out. Actually, it turned out really nice. Made a pretty good choice. That's good. Now, I thought I'll highlight something. So let me see. Turns out the light a little bit, so you look better. Stuff that I do hope you will enjoy this. I will get this out to you ASAP. Now that postal's working again, it's a lot easier to do. But yeah, I think that one turned out really well for a portrait of Scorpius from Farscape. That was pretty amazing.